It is 2:00 and this meeting will come to order. The first item is roll call, and all 5 of our trustees are here. Our treasurer is not. So we will move. Our next item is the materials acquisition policy discussion. And this is our 6-month working on the materials policy. I don't imagine I'm the only one who's tired of all the delaying tactics and would like to get this passed as soon as reasonably possible. Hopefully we can really focus on what needs to be changed and end up with the best policy possible. To make things efficient and clear, I'd like to just work from the latest version, which has all the written potential changes, and that's the class version. Trustee Claus?
Chair, I move that we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the material selection policy section by section. I give you.
If I could insert, I have some concerns about the board having discussion outside of a public meeting. At the last meeting, the board agreed that Trustee Henley would send out a version of it. And so I felt very much an ethical dilemma when I was approached by another trustee to send out a revised or updated or different version. And so I would just perhaps ask council if that constitutes discussion outside of a public meeting, and especially now that that version is the one that is being discussed.
Well, I was just suggesting what I would like, and it just seemed like the most reasonable thing to do, but
Sure.
I wasn't saying that that's what we had to do. Trustee Fox?
The point is, we can go through the Hanley. We can go through the Hanley document, which is included in the PLOS, and I will go through and add each of those things as a point of discussion. Let's just discuss it all at once. So that's the motion on the table. We don't need a second.
So for discussion, if I could.
Yes, Director.
Okay, so I would like to refer the board to the ICFL trustee manual, page 163.
The orange one?
The orange one.
What page again?
163. There are several pages relating to before it, relating to the board writing policy and governance. This section is called policy malpractice, and it outlines to avoid policy malpractice, board members might ask the following questions. Is this an instant policy? It should not be. It is important to formulate policy carefully with input from the director and staff. I'll say at this point, I don't feel that the staff or I have given sufficient input. Is this a dictatorial policy? Library policy should be formed with the goal of improving library service to the community. I have not heard from any trustee specifically about how this revised policy will improve library service.
Hold on, there's a point of order. The member will please take their...
This is not germane to the discussion for the motion on the table.
I forgot to read the motion back. I apologize. It has been moved that we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the material selection policy section by section. Discussion on that motion?
I would like to hear the rest of what the director has to say, because trying to understand if a policy is legal or not legal is absolutely germane to the discussion. I would like to hear what the director.
Point of order. That's not the motion on the table.
So I can maybe highlight specific items that go farther. Is this a sloppy policy? Have you consulted the ICFL consultant?
There's been a point of order, and I'm supposed to rule on it. Yeah, there's a motion on the table, and all the discussion should be germane to that specific motion, which is that we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the materials selection policy section by section. And I think that would give everyone an opportunity to chime in. Trustee Blank?
I don't know anywhere where it says that the discussion is limited by the chair. And so I think that we need to let each person, this is very germane to what it is we are talking about. And I have some things to say. When you limit it to exactly just this paragraph by paragraph, you are shutting down discussion, which is what we are here for. Please do not shut down discussion.
Actually, I'm keeping to the topic. The chair is supposed to keep everyone on track, and the motion that was made that we should be discussing is whether we are going to methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the material selection policy section by section. So that is what we are discussing right now. Is, you know, I guess there's two things in there. That are we going to work from the PLOS draft, and are we going to do it by section by section? Trustee Hanley?
I have no opposition to the motion on the table.
Trustee Robinson?
I think what the director was part of what she was saying is that this policy hasn't been drafted with the help of the director or staff, and that's some sort of an issue with her, because that's how policy is supposed to be formed. So I don't know. I think I'm not sure if that's what she was saying, and I would like to know exactly what she was saying about the problem with this policy, in her opinion.
Director, is that what you were saying?
It was, and one of the bullet points, like I said, I was going in order because I wanted to include it in its context. But one of the questions on this list is this a contradictory policy? A policy should never be created or revised in isolation. And I believe that that is a pitfall that may occur if we select one of the versions. We have an approved policy that's labeled materials and selection. And so if you were making changes, I still think the most appropriate thing would be to reference that policy. It also says in this paragraph that it's important to examine other policies for contraindications before creating or revising policy, and that some information may overlap and may need to be matching. And so there's some other items that I think need to be brought forward.
Point of order.
The member will state his point of order.
This draft is already got the whole original currently approved policy in there. It's just the revisions. We need to do what's on the motion, please. And I would like to make a amendment to approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the PLOS draft of material section policy. It's an amendment to the motion.
Okay, all the yellow.
So I like clarity. Is it the PLOS version or the Handley version?
I think that might be confusing. Perhaps you could withdraw the motion and we could separate this out into two different issues.
No, there's one. These will be amendments to the main motion. The main motion, I gave it first. Now this is amendment. We settle each amendment.
Okay, so Trustee Robinson?
Maybe I should wait to hear what you're going to say, but I didn't see any yellow in the definitions.
I think just the highlighting on the
There's two.
That's responsibility.
I didn't give the name. I said all the yellow strikeouts.
Oh, I thought you said in the definitions. Sorry.
Yeah, and okay, so your point of order is well received, and I should. Okay, so the motion on the table right now is the amendment to the original motion. And the amendment is amend motion to approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the PLAS draft of the materials section policy. So we have discussion on just adding that amendment to the main motion. Trustee Hanley.
So we're not doing in one fell swoop, then I assume that we're saying we'll look through the draft. Again, there was no secrecy involved. My draft was put out and posted, and so was Trustee Plas's posted as well on the CLN's website. But so I'm assuming that we're going to look at all the yellow highlighted strikeout and then agree or disagree. I just make sure you understand that, and then look at that, and then proceed further from there. Is that the procedure?
This amendment, if it's passed, would have the effect of approving all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the PLAS draft of materials section policy. Trustee Robinson.
I'm not a fan of having the definitions in there at all, personally. And are these definitions from the actual?
Okay, so we're not actually debating the yellow
How can I
and
keep
the
hearing
red
defense?
right now. We're just going to approve or disapprove of the amendment to add to the main motion.
But I thought you said the yellow strikeout and the definitions. Right? That's what you said.
The yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section.
And that's what I'm asking about, is the definitions.
But we're discussing just whether we're going to add this amendment or not add it. That's all we're discussing. So, Trustee Blas?
Well, I think you can discuss these sections as this amendment. That's my intent, is to discuss the section as an amendment to the overall motion on the table.
Once the motion is sorry?
So we come out of this amendment approving it or making an amendment to the amendment or something, or disapproving these sections that I just called out in the amendment.
Trustee Blank?
Can you please repeat the amendment again?
Yes. So move to amend the motion to approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the PLAS draft of materials selection policy. Okay. So the whole motion would read, if we approve the amendment, that we methodically approve all the PLAS draft of materials selection policy section by section, and to approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the PLAS draft of materials section policy. So right now the question is just on whether we're adding that amendment or not adding that amendment. Trustee Robinson.
The PLAS draft already contains the yellow strikeouts and the red text.
Right, so
what's the amendment? I don't understand what the
Just to
amendment.
approve.
Wouldn't that just be?
We either approve it or we.
Well, your first, I believe the first motion was to approve the PLAS draft.
yes. Or, well, no, not to approve it, but just say that we agree to work on that or not.
Oh, gotcha,
And
gotcha.
section by section.
Okay, I still think the amendment part isn't necessary because it is part of this draft already, right? And this is the draft that you want to.
Some of them were proposed because we're separating out the acquisition policy from the withdrawal and reconsideration policy. Trustee Blas.
So in my view, I've said it at Harrison, and I think I said it another time, we were plowing old ground by talking about this yellow striked out area. And I think we had a consensus vote to remove it. I'm just asking in this amendment, go ahead and discuss it and let's vote on it and make it very clear we're removing it. So I see the amendment, and maybe I'm doing the wrong parliamentary procedure, but the amendment gets to have discussion about whether we approve the amendment or want to do an amendment to the amendment to, change wording or something. But when we come out of it, we should approve it or disapprove of this section. I'm just saying, this is our,
the audience will please be quiet.
this is our way to methodically go through it. So this is a subsection of the main amendment, of the main motion.
Okay, Trustee Hammond?
So the motion, if I understood it correctly, is we're going to go through the yellow highlighted, it's just procedurally, we're going to go through the yellow highlighted areas to agree or disagree that we're agreeing that those are going to be deleted out of there, I guess, with discussion. And then the same thing with regard to the red text, that we're going to go through that section by section and agree that we like those additions that were put into the policy. That's my understanding of the motion, so that's, I guess we're limiting our discussion to that specifically, but we're not taking this as is. We're simply saying procedurally, we are going to go ahead and look at this document strictly right now by limiting our discussion, I guess it is, to the yellow strikeout area, the highlighted area, and then separately, I guess, the red text, if that's correct, I don't know.
The definitions section. Definitions is used, the red text. There's other red text. Those are the two. I think the yellow highlighted strikeout is a no-brainer. We already had a consensus vote. We can go back and look at the video to delete it, but let's just make it clear right now. And if there's any discussion on it, let's have it.
Trustee Blank?
Concerning the strikeouts, first of all, I would like us to, I received a copy of the letter.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, I don't want to be interrupted.
I'm going to make a point of order. We're discussing the amendment right now. That's all we're discussing.
I am as well. I received a copy of the letter and it was noted, the letter, and it was noted in the letter from Regina McCree.
We're not talking about a letter. I don't even know what letter we're talking about.
I'm sorry. I would like to finish what I have to say.
Point of order.
Point of order has been made, and so we need to stop conversation until it has been ruled on.
Then I would like to finish the rest of my.
Then
I would like to finish the rest of my.
Depends on how the point of order is ruled on. Okay, so state your point of order again, please.
The point of order is we have an amendment we're discussing now about the yellow striked out areas and the definitions in the policy. That is the limit. According to Robert's rules, we have to discuss the amendment and deal with it before we move on. There's nothing in here about a letter.
Okay, so I guess the point of order is partially well received. If Trustee Blank could, like in the next sentence or two, show us how her comments are germane to whether or not we are going to approve this amendment.
Yes, as pointed out, there are several constitutional deficiencies that could subject the community library network to litigation.
Okay, I'm going to make a point of order.
This
doesn't have anything to do with whether we vote on the amendment or not.
I am very concerned about something that has been struck out of this. I would like to request not to have
Trustee Blank, a point of order has been made. Or, well, would the member please state his point of order? Or is it just
the point of order is that we are talking about the amendment to remove the yellow highlighted area and the definitions. If you want to talk about the definitions, let's talk about it. I'm not interested, and it's not part of it, to talk about a letter.
Okay, the point of order is well received, and it doesn't sound like additional conversation is being made about whether we're going to approve or not approve this amendment. So I'm going to go ahead and call the previous question. The previous question has been called. There's no further debate. We're going to vote on this. So the motion or the amendment is to approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the class draft of materials section policy. So if that is approved, the whole main motion would read that we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of materials selection policy section by section and approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the PLOS draft of materials section policy.
Point of order.
Member will please state her point of order.
Are you saying that there is no more discussion on this? You have stopped discussion on this?
I called the previous question. That is what it does. It stops debate.
Calling the previous question requires a vote, and according to Robert's Rules of Order, that requires a 2/3 majority vote. That's to stop the discussion.
You are partially right. We are supposed to stop and have a vote on that. Thank you for pointing that out. However, in our bylaws, it does say that all action before the board will be approved by a majority vote. So,
Point of order.
Trustee will state her point of order.
That is a personal opinion. And nowhere does it say that it is not acceptable for 2/3 majority vote to happen, and it is required in parliamentary procedure in Robert's Rules of Order so that the minority voice is not silenced.
Okay, the point of order is not well received because that is actually what our bylaws say, pretty close word to word. I could read it here as soon as I find my copy of the bylaws.
Can I ask a question while you're doing that?
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure too, I understand that when, assuming this comes up for a vote, we're not accepting carte blanche across the board, all yellow highlighting strikeouts, well, I think that already is done once, but all red text as is. I mean, it's still going to be open for discussion. We're just saying we're going to go through it in that fashion. I just want to make sure I understand it, because certainly I might have a change or two myself.
Okay, so the bylaws say, Article 6, Section 1, an affirmative vote of the majority of all members of the board present at the time shall be necessary to approve any action before the board. The chairman may vote upon a proposal before the board. So point of order is still not well received, and we will now vote on the calling the previous question.
A question. So just for clarification, so in my packet, and I just want to make sure, there was a material selection policy that has numbers down the spine, and that was created by Henley. And then there was our current policy with edits. And then there was a selection policy that says edits in purple proposed by Trustee Klassen, and there's the selection and the withdrawal policy. So are we voting to use one of these documents, two of these documents, any of these documents that are in front of us that were in the packet? Because
right now,
I'm only hearing yellow and red and no purple. And I think as a friendly recommendation, maybe just withdraw the motion, select two policies that you want to work from so that we're all on the same page, because it is completely unclear what you are proposing.
Sure.
Okay, so actually we had called the previous question, and that we are not supposed to have any debate after that. We're just supposed to vote on that. So that's what we are doing right now. All those who, let's see, how do I state that?
Can't somebody talk if they haven't had a question about? Because
no.
Mine is the same as the other trustee just said. I'm not sure if the.
Okay, so I'm sorry, point of order. Actually, the question right now is calling the previous question, and there's not supposed to be any debate after that. So all those in favor of the calling the previous question, say aye.
Aye.
Calling previous question just means that debate stops and we vote on the motion that was on the floor already, which would be the amendment. So yes?
No.
Okay, yes. So there are three yeses, and so calling previous question. Now we will go back to the previous question because the ayes have it. So the question is to amend the main motion to approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definitions section of the PLOS draft of materials policy. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No, because that's what calling the previous question did, was stop.
It stopped discussion on the full motion.
It stopped debate. No, just on whether we're going to add the amendment or not. Otherwise, we're going to be here for hours just
But I'm
discussing
not
whether
clear on
there's
the
going to be.
amendment, because.
Okay, I will read the amendment one more time.
No,
The
I know.
amendment that we are voting on right now is to approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the PLOS draft of the materials section policy. If approved, the main motion would then read that we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the materials selection policy section by section and approve all the yellow strikeouts and adding all the red text in the definition section of the PLOS draft of the materials section. So right now we are only voting on whether we are going to add that amendment or not. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
No.
Aye.
No.
Okay. Trustee Hanna?
I'm sorry to go back to it. I don't understand the motion properly. I want to make sure that I'm not saying, yes, I'm accepting all the yellow strikeouts and I'm taking the definitions as presented. If that's not open for
We
discussion.
already voted on this.
Yes, we voted on it. The
moving
motion
on.
Okay.
is lost. So the amendment is not there. So now we are back to the main motion, which is that we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the material selection policy section by section. Trustee Glass.
I amend the motion to approve all changes shown in the statement purpose section of the PLOS draft.
It might be better just for us to decide on a draft that we're working from first before we add anything else. Do you want to
We've
withdraw
already
your
said
amendment?
We've already said it's the PLOS draft, everything, and the PLOS
That's your
draft.
motion.
The PLOS, yes, the PLOS, there's no question, we're doing the PLOS draft.
Well, we
And that
haven't voted on it yet.
We have the motion,
We have a motion
and that's what
to
we're
vote on.
discussing.
Yes,
We're discussing the PLOS draft. It's the motion on the table.
okay, so the motion is whether we are going to use the PLOS draft so that we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the material selection policy section by section. So we're just discussing whether we're going to go forward with that motion or not. We're not actually.
So the motion is for clarity?
That we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of materials selection policy section by section. That seems like an orderly way to go about it. And then everyone has a potential to give their opinion. And the director can add section by section if she thinks that there should be any changes. So if there is no further discussion, there is further discussion.
Yes.
Trustee Robinson.
For clarity, so in that motion, it kind of sounds like we're passing this after we pick it apart. But we're not, I mean, we go through it section by section and it still may not be passable. Is that correct?
It might not, in which case we would just not approve it at the end. So Trustee Glass?
So the purpose of the original motion is to guide us through the step by step. The amendments will take us for each step in approval, but we don't want to say we're going to do the PLOS draft and pass it and then all of a sudden have another motion on the table that we're going to do some other draft. We want to stay with the PLOS draft, so there needs to be a main motion and these others are amendments. So I'm opposed to just passing that until we do these amendments to take us through the section, because I don't want to get diverted to a different draft.
Okay, so we have this motion that's on the floor, and then after that's passed or not passed, then the next motion could come up. Because it just, that's kind of an orderly way to do it. So did you have an amendment to that, or should we just do the main motion and get that far?
I would like to do amendments before we pass that main motion, so that we stay on the PLOS draft the whole way through and
Right.
don't get diverted to something else.
Right. So
And once you pass it, you might get diverted to something else.
So if we pass this motion, that's what we're agreeing to, is that we're going to be working on the PLOS draft section by section. That's what the motion says.
So I would just restate my concern that at our last board meeting, it was decided by the will of the board that Trustee Henley would put together a draft. He put that draft out with, I think it was 10 days for the board. It was put on the website immediately as part of the board packet. The version that is being discussed right now was only added to the website, I believe, yesterday. And again, it was not the specific will of the board from the last meeting. So again, because of my concern that this version was created and revised in isolation and not in a meeting or not without discussion, that the board continue its previous decision to follow the Hanley draft and add Place's revisions like everybody else's in a public meeting where it can be observed to be added.
Well, I don't think that us asking one trustee to make a draft prohibits anyone else from doing it. And I know that 2 of the trustees, or actually 3 or 4 of the trustees, previously have said that they would like the changes in writing beforehand. So I think that honors all that. Trustee Hanley.
I have the email here, and the library director sent out the PLOS draft on Monday. Today's Thursday.
I sent that out to the trustees, so just point of clarification, it was added to the board packet yesterday, online for the public to review.
Okay, Trustee Bloss.
Okay, the colors are still the same as the Hanley draft. The red, the yellow, the blue, all of that is exactly the Hanley draft. The only difference is the changes in purple. And rather than trying to put the words out and then have several trustees saying they can't comprehend it because it's too many words and so forth, I put it in here so we could see it in writing. And I would like us to go through the PLOS one, which includes everything Hanley had.
I agree. I thought it was very readable and understandable. All right, so are we just going to vote on the main motion then? Okay. All right, it has been moved that we methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the materials selection policy section by section. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the ayes have it. Motion is carried, and we will now methodically approve all the PLOS draft of the materials selection policy section by section. Trustee Bloss.
So I move that we, try again, I move that we approve deleting all the yellow strikeouts, adding the red text in the definition section of the PLOS draft of the material selection policy. So it's the same as my amendment. I just had it, so now I move it.
I think once it was a motion that we can't bring it back in front of the trust. Well, but if it's the same wording, if you change it, just one or the other, or add something else, you can, but you can't move the same motion that's already been moved.
Okay, let's change it to move that we approve all changes shown in the statement of purpose section of the PLOS draft.
A point of order.
The member will state her point of order.
I thought we were in the middle of discussion of a motion. The motion that you stated that we methodically approved.
Yes, and that has been approved.
Okay. Are we not going to go through that? That's just what so we have made that motion, but we're not going to go methodically through it. Or you're saying that the
I need to write down the motion. Yeah, that makes it easier. Thank you.
So all I'm saying is I'm confused. I'm not so the motion was simply that we go through it, but we're not going to go through it.
I hope we do. I'm hoping to go through it.
Okay,
okay,
I will reread it.
There's a motion.
It has been moved that we approve all changes shown in the statement of purpose section of the PLOS draft. So that's just that first section there on the first page. That is complying with the previous motion to methodically go through it by section by section.
Okay, so we are simply looking right now at the statement of purpose section, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Well, no, actually,
I guess I didn't understand the motion.
okay, I'll read it again. It has been moved that we approve all changes shown in the statement of purpose section of the PLOS draft.
Okay.
So we can discuss that first section. Yes, we discussed, and then when we get done with any changes, then we can vote on that motion. So Trustee Blank.
Where did this come from? Particularly this first sentence. I've asked this before, but what my concerns are that this draft was proposed by Trustee Hanley and edited by Trustee Kloss, who are the newest board members. And so I'm wanting to know where this came from.
Trustee Hanley?
I think we were discussing the content of this section, not necessarily where it came from. So if a trustee has an issue with the contents, that's fine, call it out, we can discuss that. I think that's what we agreed to just now. And in case there's any ambiguity or nobody understanding the United States versus American Library Association, that was surrounding the Children's Internet Protection Act. So that's what that refers to.
Okay, and I like everything in the section, all the changes.
We discussed.
Trustee Blank?
I'm concerned about the librarian curates and curtails. I don't understand what curtails means. And then moving on there, it says, the librarian curates and curtails the collection of reading materials for an entire community in a sense. So those two things, curtails and in a sense, I am not clear about. And this is going to be a legal document, so I would like to understand what that means.
Trustee Fox?
I would like to propose an amendment. Amend the motion to insert a period after the word residence. This is a run-on sentence, that's why I'm doing it.
Chair, I had my hand raised prior to this.
She's
I'd
not
like
a
to
member
go
of the
through
board.
first sentence of this
Sure.
policy, if I could do that before we have an amendment to it.
Point of order. It's my understanding that
Point
the
of order.
assistant library director is not a member of the board.
So I just delegated to her. I asked her to, the trustee in response to Trustee Blank's comment about librarian and what it means to curate and curtail from a professional librarian perspective. I think that's relevant, so I'd like to address that question.
Look, point of order, I am in the middle of an amendment.
Okay.
This is a discussion.
What he had stated that he wanted to amend it,
So I was going with an amendment.
okay. The trustee will state his amendment.
Point of
please.
order. I had a question. That was being answered. And that's right in the middle of discussion. I mean, we don't make amendments right in the middle of discussion.
Yeah, we can make an amendment anytime we want to, and I'm not a dictator, I'm not gonna force. Anyway, would the trustee please finish his amendment?
Okay, start again. Amend the motion to insert a period after the word residence and to replace the next words.
Okay, to insert a period
I'll give you this.
after the, okay.
And to openly replace the next words, openly afford with the words, this policy openly affords. So the purpose is to make a second sentence so we don't have a run-on sentence.
Do we need to make motions for each edit as we go through this thing?
Yeah, Trustee Sloss, I don't think that we need to do that. I think that's gonna take a really long time.
Then
If
we
we,
just vote on the amendment.
Chair Hudson, I have a question about the meaning of the motion. When we are methodically approving each section, does approving each section mean it's amending the policy that's currently in place? Or do we mean we're approving a new draft that the board will vote on at the end of the discussion? Right, does that mean when we approve
It's a new draft.
changes in each section of this draft, it creates a new draft, kind of when we get some work done? And then someone will make a motion at that point, and there will be a discussion about the complete draft? Or are we going through each section, and when we approve this section, it amends the policy that's currently in place?
Okay, I would think that we're making a new draft, but is that,
Yeah.
okay, just wanted to make sure.
Because that other way would be very problematic for us to understand. Okay.
Yeah, no, and we need to send it to legal review
Okay.
before we final or approve conclusively the end product. So,
Well, that can help with the meeting then, that we don't have to be voting and taking motions every step of the way.
Yeah.
yeah,
You
we
could
just go by
reach
section.
consensus on to propose changes, as long as there's an opportunity when there is a finalized draft that there will be discussion for each board member to provide input to that complete draft at that time.
Well,
So does he withdraw his motion then?
Trustee Glass?
I intend to have, once we go through each section, to have a motion, when I already put the motion on the table at the beginning, to have a motion to approve the corrections we made. That
Right,
would be
so-
at the end of this. It's not gonna go offline and go do another draft someplace that gets sent out.
Yeah, I think it would make more sense, if you wanted to make a motion for each section, that's fine. But as far as changes within that section, I think we could do that by consensus and it would be a lot more efficient. Because we've gotten nowhere and it's already been for over 40 minutes. So do you want to withdraw the amendment? And we'll just go back to,
Well, I've got it out there, you either approve it and it's done, and can we just vote to approve it and it's done?
yeah, I'm not going to make you withdraw it. I just was asking.
If there's discussion on it, have discussion, but all I'm doing is putting a period there and making a second sentence at the end.
Okay, so the amendment on the floor then is added to the main motion to insert a period after residence and to replace the next words and to openly afford with this policy openly affords. So we're just discussing whether we're going to do the amendment or not. Yes, Trustee Roberts.
Is it necessary to have an amendment or a motion to add a period or to correct a run-on sentence?
I'm not sure that it is, but he didn't withdraw his amendment, so we're going to go ahead and.
Right, but
vote on that.
that's part of my discussion, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
Yes,
If
Trustee
you want to
Glass.
have a discussion, let's have a discussion. But basically, we're going to vote on it just like we would with consensus right now. If you agree with it, I've already done
All
it.
right.
If I
So-
could just clarify. So it's not making
Well,
sense.
actually, right now, the only thing that we're discussing is whether to add that amendment or not.
Well, and that's what I wanted to, it's not making sense that a policy affords, it's the library and our resources that afford. So it doesn't make any sense to me to say that a policy affords.
Somewhere here. I don't know what it's going to change to.
I think it's fine as is.
It's this policy, or policy in general.
What is it, point of order? Can we just vote? What is that, when you just call for a vote?
They called previous question.
Call to previous question.
Okay, the previous question has been called. No further, there's no debate allowed on that. So we will now vote on the amendment, or whether.
You have to
we're going
vote on the previous question.
Which is the amendment.
Yeah.
Right now.
Point of order, you have to vote on calling for the question.
Right, thanks, once again. All right, so the previous question has been called. All those in favor of ending debate and getting to vote on the amendment right now, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the ayes have it, and the previous question is now to insert a period after residence and to replace the next words and to openly afford with this policy openly affords.
It doesn't work.
So all those in favor of adding that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, the nays have it. The motion, the amendment motion is lost, and we are back to that we approve all changes shown in the statement of purpose section of the PLOS draft. Trustee Blank.
I would like to ask that we go back and I have it explained what curates and curtails the collection and for the community. And the other concern I have is in a sense, I don't understand those. And that was what was being answered. And the motion is about going through each section and asking questions about it. And that is what I am doing.
Okay, and you can ask questions, and I'm not going to force anyone to answer. If anyone wants to answer, they can. If they have other discussion or comments, they can do that.
I think that I need clarification on this. And so I would like to hear from, first of all, staff, and then I would like to hear from the people who made the policy. I don't understand why you will, we can discuss it, but you're not going to answer any questions. So I don't understand what curates and curtails mean, and the staff member was ready to say something.
Would the staff member please answer? Yeah.
My original comment was not actually answering that. If I could say my original comment without offending Trustee Hanley, the first statement, the vocation of a librarian requires commitment to freedom of speech. That statement is false because there are other occupations such as religious leaders, lawyers, newspaper reporters, authors, teachers, professors. All of those individuals have that same, if not greater, authority. So I believe that first statement in the paragraph should be stricken and/or corrected.
Well, I think, there's going to be specifics to each thing. So this wouldn't be exactly like other ones. Trustee Hanley.
The one trustee was looking for a definition on curtail, and it looks like it could be to limit or restrict. That's one of the definitions I pulled up from online dictionary, Wiktionary actually, if that helps the other trustee.
Okay, do we have further discussion on the motion?
No.
Trustee Blank?
Yes. Also, what does this mean in a sense? The librarian curates and curtails. Thank you for defining that for me. The collection, so librarian curates and curtails the collection of reading materials for an entire community in a sense. What do you mean in a sense? I don't understand why, I don't understand in a sense. I mean, it's so vague. They either do or they don't?
I don't understand why it would be disallowed. I think it's fine.
I was trying to understand what it meant in a sense. What does that mean? I'm not saying it should be allowed or not allowed. I'm asking, what does it mean? If they curate in a sense, what does that mean? I wouldn't know how to direct our librarian to curate or curtail in a sense. Please curate or curtail our collection in a sense.
Trustee Hanley?
In a sense, could be similar to saying that, in a sense, as the head of my household, I'm looking out for safety issues, in a sense. I don't own that entirely. The library is acting, in a sense, as the purchasing decider out there as to what they're going to purchase and what they may not purchase. I think it's pretty clear. I don't have any additional comments regarding that.
I would add, if I could. I would say one of my concerns is that the first statement talks about viewpoint, and then it sort of is right after that we're talking about, and librarians do not curtail viewpoint. We do not discriminate
Selection considerations are for the work as a whole, and they're not excluded based on representations of race or sex or gender, frankness of language, controversy. There are a lot of things, and so I'm concerned that there's a reference that is not specific. I mean, we may curtail based on the cost of an item, or if it's accurate, or if it's timely, or if it's suitable for an audience, but we are not making viewpoint curtailment. And so I'm not sure that because of the ordering of those sentences, that makes sense to me.
There's no further discussion.
I have no further discussion. Trustee Robinson?
I have the 11.4.22 policy, material selection policy in front of me. I would actually rather just keep the objective portion in there in place of all this other, the red and, well, the black is, okay, so the black in the new one is the old objective. Yeah. This United States versus, what is that? What's the AM library?
American?
Okay. I don't know why that's in there. I think that's odd to have that part in the statement of purpose and intent for policy. I think the original objective in the policy that was done in 2022 is just clear. It's clear, the objective. And I, in fact, don't know why we're even changing the 11.4.22 policy in the first place, and especially taking out what we added, which was Idaho Code, where is it? Idaho Code 18, 15, 13, 18, 15, 14,
Hold on,
18,
there's been a
15,
point of order
15.
called. Trustee Fox? Member will please state his point
We're
of
having
order.
discussion on the statement of purpose section.
Correct, so
We're
am I.
not talking about further on in the document. And
No, that's all under statement of purpose. This policy defines the community library network's responsibility to establish and maintain a balanced and diverse collection of materials that meet the informational, educational, and recreational needs for our residents. And that is in the section that we're talking about. I just don't think all the stuff in the red is really that necessary.
It's in the yellow on page 3.
No, it's right, it is in that section.
Hold on, Trustee Hanley has the floor.
My only change to the entire paragraph we're discussing is I think we should leave a comma after the word residence, and I have nothing else to be changed. I'm satisfied with where it is.
Okay, so could we do that by consensus then? Just to add a comma? Okay. All those that have consensus, please verbally respond.
add a comma where?
After the word residence.
It is already
I
there.
can't tell what that is. There's three little markers.
Period struck out and a comma's there, but you've got to
Comma?
run.
Good, that's good.
You've got to run on sentence there.
All right, that's fine. It would make no sense to break it up. So a comma.
Okay, so do we have consensus on just adding the comment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Trustee Blank?
I would like to, when our librarian, our director says that the things that we are adding take away clarity from the policy in order to implement this policy, I have a profound concern. I would like to I would like to agree with Trustee Robinson that the clearer the objective as it was originally stated and as it is here, just to, it is what we need. We need clarity so that the staff can implement this. And we were just told that that doesn't, so I would say we would take the red out.
Trustee Henley?
I think okay, and I guess I don't know how long we continue discussion on a given paragraph as we go through here, but I think we just, generally speaking, had consensus that we agreed with the contents with the addition of one comma.
We agreed to add the comment. We haven't voted on accepting that. Trustee Blas?
So the commas there, I've still got an amendment that I think we're working on, which is to accept these changes. I have a motion, I guess it is.
Yes.
But my amendment failed, so we're leaving the run-on sentence. I would like to call the question and vote on this.
Okay, the previous question has been called, and so we will vote just on that, whether we're going to go back to the previous question without debate. All those in favor?
What's the previous question?
Was the main motion on the floor that we approve all changes shown in the statement of purpose section of the PLOS draft. Those in favor of going back to the previous question, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, and the calling of the previous question proceeds, and that we will now go to the main motion, which is that we approve all changes shown in the statement's purpose section of the PLOS draft. And all those in favor?
I would like to call a roll call vote, please.
Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Blas?
Aye.
Trustee Blank?
Nay.
Trustee Robinson?
Nay.
Trustee Hanley?
Aye.
Okay, and Trustee Addison is an aye. The ayes have it. And so now we have approved all the changes shown in the statement of purpose section of the PLOS draft. And we can move on to the next section. Trustee Blas?
I'd like to move that we approve all the changes shown in the objective and responsibilities section of the draft, PLOS draft.
What happened to the other one?
So that's your extra two sections.
What happened to objective
Not counting the yellow that was already
and
struck.
scope?
And
Well, that would require an amendment to the previous motion where we're going to look at section by section.
We are looking at it.
okay, so
This is the.
well, that would be two sections. So technically your motion is out of order.
Okay.
I would entertain, or actually we could just do it by consensus, the objective and scope of policy. We can start discussion on that section.
Did we have a motion?
It's out of order.
His motion was out of order.
Right in two seconds.
Oh, so
And so now we're just, since we have a previous motion that's already been passed, that we'll do it section by section, we're just going to go to the next
okay,
section.
all right, I was confused.
So objective and scope of policy. Trustee Hanley?
Is it open for discussion?
Yes.
Okay. I tend to disagree with the changes in purple for the first sentence. It changes it materially changes the materials selection policy because it's written up here, that's what I submitted, that this policy is limited to new acquisitions. It has nothing to do with existing books. That's what the other policy is about. And so it is about the initial selection and acquisition of books and materials. So I don't see any reason or way we can, we're trying to differentiate, is my understanding. There's a different, I'll call it a legal litmus test between current materials that are in the library versus new acquisitions. And if I understood it correctly, new acquisitions have a little looser legal interpretation of what we can do, whereas materials that already exist, it's very tight. And so I'm limiting myself in here, at least what I had submitted originally, to new acquisitions, nothing to do with existing materials in the library.
Well, the way I was reading it was that the word initial is not necessary because all acquisitions would mean the purchasing of the books.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Trustee Plus.
So what I'm really concerned about is if a book was initially selected 2 years ago and it was viewed okay, I'm afraid this policy will let those slip by. I don't like the word initial because initial might have happened for a particular book 2 years ago. I want this policy to be the selection and acquisition of books regardless of previously acquired. That's why that phrase is in there. And I don't like putting initial because it confuses to what was initial 2 years ago. And that's why I don't like the word pre-existing, because in engineering that means negative infinity. It's not just time equals zero. It's just existing. The word retention is the proper word. Retainment is not even a word. And so these other things were to clean it up. But I am very concerned that this could be interpreted as a book that was bought 2 years ago was initially selected. Okay, so I want it to be regardless of whether it was previously acquired.
Trustee Robinson, were you next?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm going to try to verbalize this. It's kind of my brain swimming around a little bit. I believe what the trustee was just saying is kind of like if somebody stepped on a beetle on the sidewalk and killed it, and then the next day that became a law that, you know, you go to jail for that. You can't go back and put that person in jail because it wasn't the law at the time. So if a book was initially brought into the library 2 years ago, and the new policy says we can no longer, or that would be a book that would be selected under the new policy, that would go under the, what's it, deselection, the weeding policy? That would have to fit under the weeding policy. You can't retroactive something that's already in the library under a material selection policy only. Because this material selection policy is literally called material selection policy, not material already in the library policy.
Trustee Fox?
If a book was bought 2 years ago and it's been damaged or they need to replace it, if it was decided 2 years ago that it was okay, now the rules are different. It doesn't matter whether it was previously acquired. Maybe we're not going to get rid of it. It's already in there. I agree. If it's already in there, that doesn't pertain to this. This is for purchase of any new purchases, whether they were bought or not. They have to comply with this.
Trustee Blank?
Does that open it up by putting it in this way? Does that open it up for every single book in the collection to have to be re-looked at? That would be a concern of mine. And then the second thing is I'm afraid there might be a misunderstanding of certainly there's a difference between selection and deselection, but the criteria for selection and deselection in terms of point of view, et cetera, aren't they the same? And this would be a question to the librarian. I understand for deselection, we are talking about condition of book. If it's but for point of view, or aren't the selection and the deselection policies the same? I mean, that's a question I would like to ask of the librarian, of our director.
Okay, I like all the changes that were made, and everything will be going to our attorney for a legal review before we approve it. Anyway, so.
Can I have the point of view of the director?
I have the floor right now. I would like to keep that last sentence, the purple sentence that has been crossed out. It says, no specific book or material was contemplated by or known to the board during the enactment of this policy, et cetera, et cetera. Because after reading the case that our council passed out last time, it seems like that should be in there. Trustee Bloss?
So if you want to keep that, let's get rid of the and just start with the new sentence, no specific book. So again, we don't have this big long run-on sentence.
Okay. All right. So remove the and capitalize the N for no. Do we have consensus on that?
On that one change?
On that one change?
I'm
And the policy.
I'm good.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Okay, so we have 3 people consensus that we will retain the no specific book, that whole sentence there, that we will remove the and capitalize the N for now. All right, Trustee Blank.
I still would like this question answered about selection and deselection. Basically, I just want it answered by the director that there's not a difference except in quality of the physical. Is there, I mean, we keep talking about that there's a difference between what we select and what we deselect. So I am not aware that is actually the case. Can I ask the director that? Please. Can I?
I'm sorry, there's a point of order. Member will please state.
It's obvious there's 2 policies we're talking about. They are different. We don't need to have the director explain what is obvious here. And it's a diversion. We're talking about this paragraph. So please, let's stay on topic.
So I would just add specifically about this
paragraph. In hearing one of the trustees' comments about the reason for the change, I think, what would stop a patron from stealing a book or removing it and self-selecting that they don't want it on our shelf, and then we would be unable to repurchase that material? Why not just, eliminate the process of reconsideration and steal it? I mean, that's what happened with one of the books recently, is that it was not checked out. It was actually taken from our shelves. And so I think if it meets our selection criteria, then that's what matters. And the acquisition and these other changes are unnecessary.
I think it's already illegal to steal.
But to tell me that I can't purchase something is censorship. And that also is a crime.
The trustees now are deciding if the new policy will be no books are bought that don't comply with the new policy. It doesn't matter what the history was. We are not going to spend taxpayer money on any book that does not comply with the policy we select.
The audience, please be quiet. This is a board meeting. Trustee Robinson?
So what's existing right now for, I guess, policy or best practice, or if there is a book in the library that has been under reconsideration and moved to a different section, or if there's already a book in the library that a new policy wouldn't allow the library to bring in, what happens to the book that's already in the library? Was that a clear enough question? Should I restate that? Yeah. Okay, if there's a book, okay, let's just say identical is in the library, and say the new policy wouldn't allow identical to be purchased. What happens to that book that already exists in the library?
Answer.
No, I actually don't want a trustee to answer it. I would like a librarian to answer it. I'm sorry.
Trustee Hanley?
That answer is contained in the other policy we're supposed to review today regarding retention.
What I asked for, it was specifically what happens right now, not what is going to happen.
So I I would refer you back to the current policy that says materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho codes, and it lists the codes, will be excluded from the juvenile and young adult collections. So I'm going to say very clearly that the harmful to minor materials are not in the library, are not in the juvenile and young adult collections. So there would be no materials that would be removed based on the proposed language with definitions. If it's taken as a whole, it's only because of the proposal of taking it in part that the majority of the materials in the adult collection would be removed.
Trustee Robinson? And thank you for answering that. And that brings up a really big question I have on this. And I know we're going piece by piece, but this is kind of a question for the entire policy in each piece. Is there, does it actually say in here that any of this is for children's books or for the entire library?
It's addressed.
What's that? Is it?
So,
At some point? Trustee Boss?
Okay, I have an amendment to the selection process that I'm not going to get into now, but this is wrong for the director to say it's going to take these books out of the whole library, including adult. We haven't got to that section, and that was a mistake on my part, but it should say the library's non-adult collection. So let's not go down that until we get to that.
That's in a different section?
Yes,
Okay,
but you shouldn't be saying this.
Okay, so we made the one change. Do we have consensus on accepting the whole objective and scope of policy section? No, you have Trustee Hanley?
I can take most of the, I agree with bringing back that last sentence that was lined out, the purple one, and starting a new sentence. I agree with that. I don't think we voted on it, but I think we have consensus.
Yes.
Okay, and I would say, reading from the beginning, the policy pertains only to, I can live without initial, I don't care, only to the selection and acquisition, I'm fine with that, of books and materials. I don't think we can take out regardless if previously acquired. I think that kind of defeats the whole idea of separating this policy and the other one.
That's actually not being taken out, it's being added.
I'm saying, I don't think it should be added, I beg your pardon. So it should be this policy pertains to the selection and acquisition of books and materials for the library's collection. And I want to include and leave in there, not the removal of existing library materials. I think that's, again, where we get into a legal tangle. That isn't the objective of this policy. We're not worrying about and getting about, so we want to maybe call it out and say, it's not to include the removal or the existing library materials. And then I'm okay with the other change, policy regarding retention and getting rid of the word retainment, removal or relocation of, I can go without pre-existing, just existing materials is strictly is outside the scope. So I'm okay with most of the changes, but I think that adding in regardless if previously acquired defeats the idea of having a different policy here. We're not dealing with previously acquired materials.
Trustee Claus?
That's why I took out not removal of existing library materials, because that is in the other policy. I didn't want to put that in. But regardless of previously acquired, applies to the case, or maybe a book that was picked 5 years ago that is gone, that doesn't meet this, cannot be purchased. And if we don't say regardless of previously acquired, you're going to leave a loophole for somebody to go buy a book that was decided 2 or 5 years ago. We don't want.
Trustee Claus has the floor.
We don't want our library network to be buying a book just because somebody decided 2 or 3 years ago it was okay. I really want that regardless of previously acquired.
Trustee Claus? Or Hanley, sorry.
Okay. I think that just to build a policy around the possibility that a book was purchased once upon a time and is maybe going to be repurchased, I think it's a stretch just as much as making a policy revolving around a book that might have been stolen. and replaced. So I'd rather not look for every small possible loophole that could be sneaked into the library here as far as replacing a book. But I won't beat this paragraph to death. I can live with most of it, but and again, it's going to go back for legal review eventually anyway, but we should provide our best product before we submit it.
Trustee Blank?
In looking at this and I think this is an area that leaves us wide open to accusations of censorship. And I think we need to be, there's no doubt that it needs to be legally reviewed.
If I could just add, that ICFO policies under that section on page 149 sort of describes policies as broadly stated guidelines for actions and decisions, basis for procedures, but not detailed courses of action. And they're effective tools for transferring decision-making to lower levels in the organization. And so I am concerned about some of the details that are also coming into this section about whether it's really a policy or it is becoming too detailed.
Trustee Robinson?
And that's why I keep going back to the policy, material selection policy we passed last year. It's just crisp and it's clear, and we just did it. And we did it for the purpose to keep sexually explicit material out of the children's section. And of course, then we also did the kids cards and the teen cards. I'm not sure exactly what their titles are, but I just see so much confusion in this and things that shouldn't even be in a material selection policy. To me, it's just confusing. And I really thought we were getting, and I know we got them online and I read these, but it's just more things being added. And I don't understand the difference between, I don't understand why we need a new one when we did it last year and we did the kids cards. I guess what I'm asking is, what is the purpose of even redoing this when we did it last year and implemented the kids cards? If it's to get rid of sexually explicit material for children, we've done it.
Okay,
Who taught you
everyone
that?
please state his point of order.
We're supposed to be reviewing the wording of sections, not talking about the overall purpose of what we're doing. We are rewriting a policy and we've already agreed to look at sections. So let's stay to looking at the sections.
Trustee Paley.
So how do we want to go about, I mean, I don't really care what the past board did. I'm in the current board, and we're working on this, as the trustee said, on this particular paragraph. So do we want to read and go through a sentence to finish this review of this one very small paragraph? I'm just curious, how do we proceed from here regarding this one paragraph?
We can suggest changes. I might suggest that we keep regardless of previously acquired, because loopholes is the reason why we're redoing the policy.
Okay.
Because the last policy had loopholes. And then maybe also keep the not removal of any existing library materials. So do we have consensus on keeping both of those sentences, regardless of previously acquired or partial sentences, and not removal of any existing library materials? Consensus?
I'm okay with that.
Okay,
I am
we
not.
have consensus.
I'm going to say no to that.
Okay. And Trustee Robinson, do you hear any on that?
I think that whole section doesn't need to be there for this particular policy.
Okay, and I am in favor of that, so we do have consensus to keep those two parts of the sentences. Janelle, did you get all that?
I ask a question just about why do we have two policies instead of one? The trend I did check out the Meridian Library, I checked out the Spokane County Library. Most of them are calling them collection and development policies. And again, the objective and scope of the policy has been now narrowly defined into two policies. So I'm still not understanding why we can't have one. And in terms of like objective or scope, like Spokane County has something more like the library collection shall be organized and maintained to facilitate access. I would prefer that as an objective for the library, or there shall be no prejudicial laboring, sequestering, or alteration of materials because of the controversy surrounding the author or subject matter. And that's again a quote from another policy. So I don't understand why we are now separating the same collection development into two separate policies.
Okay, it sounded like from the case that was presented by council at our last meeting that it would be better to separate them. So I'm for it.
I would just say I would caution the board, and I don't know if council wants to chime in, but there are a lot of case law relating to acquisitions as well as deselection or removal of materials. That was only one case law that he specifically explained to us regarding the First Amendment. I believe it's probably more complicated than a 10-minute board training. And so I think the board will maybe be surprised that there are laws relating to the acquisition as well that are fairly stringent. And I don't know if he wants to. I did request after our last meeting that council begin preparing some training for the board on acquisition of materials.
Okay, Trustee Hanley.
I'd like to move on to the second sentence. I think I can live with the way it was amended. Policy regarding the retention, removal, or relocation of existing materials is outside the scope of this policy. I'm okay with the changes made for that sentence.
Oh, okay, well, we could just have consensus on the entire section.
It's the only sentence we didn't talk about.
Can you read the whole thing the way we would have consensus?
Okay, this policy pertains only to the selection and acquisition of books and materials, regardless of previously acquired for the library's collection, not removal of any existing library materials. Policy regarding retention, retainment, removal, or relocation of existing materials. Whoops, I think I added.
Regarding retention, yeah.
Regarding retention.
Yes.
Removal or relocation of existing materials is outside the scope of this policy. No specific book or material was contemplated by or known to the board during the enactment of this policy, and it is entirely unknown what, if any, future books or materials could be subjected to this policy. So do we have consensus on approving that section for the new draft?
Can we do this by individual vote?
Well, this is consensus. So
Okay, I am voting in the consensus no.
Okay.
I think that this is a highly suspect.
Okay, we have 3 members, consensus, that is the majority, and so we are now approving this section as amended. And we can move on to the next section, which is responsibility. Trustee Hanley?
I'm fine with the entire paragraph. It's not a very big paragraph. There's only one change that was crossed out the word. Although, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. I think ultimately does belong in there because the Board of Trustees does ultimately, we are the highest authority there is on the selection process. So I think taking that out is actually detrimental. Other than that one word being crossed out, I'd like to keep it in there. I'm fine with the entire paragraph.
Okay, I'm good either way. Trustee Bloss?
So I took ultimately out because ultimately it lies with the taxpayers who elected us. Ultimately, is the voters. I don't think it's necessary that we say ultimately, but we guide them with the selected project. So I don't think we're the ultimate. That's why I took it out.
Trustee Hanley?
I'm not willing to die on this hill, so I can live with or without ultimately. I think that it should be in there, but you know what? For the sake of getting something done in this meeting, I can go either way on it, so.
Okay, Trustee Blank?
Does ultimately refer to the fact that as elected officials, we have responsibility for the final decision. The buck stops here.
I read it that way.
Yes.
Okay, trustee, oh, sorry, are you done? Trustee Robinson, did you want to chime in?
No, but I thought we discussed that, I guess I do. We did discuss that in the past, and I believe that's what we were talking about, that it does, we are the ones that make the policy. So it does stop with us. We ultimately do.
Okay, so trustee Claus, you want to go with taking ultimately out?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, trustee Blank?
It is the this is a responsibility statement, and then what it is saying that the trustees take responsibility ultimately. We accept that responsibility.
Okay, so do we have consensus on the responsibility of the whole section as amended in this version?
Yes.
Keeping the.
And are you saying taking ultimately out?
Yes, that is the way it is amended.
I thought we just talked about leaving.
Or,
I think everybody said it was okay. And
Yeah,
okay.
leave it in there.
Okay, so as amended, leaving the word ultimately in there. We have consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, we will move on to the next section, which is, that's already been taken out. We already had consensus on that, right?
Yes.
No, I have some things to say. Excuse me.
We've already taken it out.
In the past, yeah.
So I guess if you want to make a comment, you can make it and then we'll move on.
Yes, I do. I want to, hang on a second. I want to make a comment on it because we're talking about all of the yellow that's struck out. That's what the motion said. And so this is the section on intellectual freedom. And at our last meeting, our attorney said, so the intellectual freedom absolutely relates directly to the First Amendment, which is something that's vitally important in a public library. And our attorney said at the last meeting, the public has a First Amendment right to receive information. And then he also said, this is something important to take into account for policy development. By taking this out, you are taking away your commitment to the First Amendment.
Trustee Henley?
I may have stated in the past, but not having something in this document doesn't take anything away. I believe in the Second Amendment. It's not in here, so does that mean we cancel the Second Amendment? I think no. So I think we already agreed in previous meetings as well, by the way, that the intellectual freedom, actually everything in the yellow right there, was to be deleted, and we already agreed to that. So I'm not saying the trustee can't discuss it, but we already agreed. My understanding is to take that out.
Okay, so we will move on to the next section, which is definitions as used in this policy. I'm good with everything in there. I'm not sure who was first. Trustee Robinson?
Are these definitions from the Idaho code that is in our last material selection policy, which is Idaho Code 18, 15, 13, 15, 14, and 15, 15. Is that where these definitions are from? And are they necessary to be in there? Just like, I don't think that the Second Amendment was a good example because it's a library. But just like a previous trustee mentioned, just because it's not in here doesn't mean it's not in here. If you just put the code, then it is still in here. But I personally don't want these definitions on our policy. And please don't forget my first question. Are they actually Idaho definitions?
Trustee Hanley?
I have one change I would like to make, amending my own writings here. The first, under the very first paragraph there, under this section, so forth.
Point of order. I literally had questions. I have questions I want answered.
Okay, that's actually not a point of order.
Well, I don't know what it is,
Force-
but I
You can
want to
ask-
know if these are from the Idaho code, because somebody put them in here.
Okay,
I want to
so
know if they're from the
actually,
Idaho code, and if not, that makes them an opinion.
the point of order is not well received, and Trustee Hanley has the floor.
Okay, back at this, the last part of the first sentence, I think we need to say, it goes through the last line, I'll call it. When the material or performance taken as a whole or in part has any of the following characteristics. Because the way it's written there, I guess you'd have to have all three, A, B, and C. So I think that that's a material change to the way this comes out. So I think that adding that in there at between, so.
Okay,
So
can you,
as a whole, or in, okay, on the last sentence, or last line in the first paragraph, when the material or performance taken as a whole or in part has any of the following characteristics.
I think that's a good change. Trustee Blank?
I would like to say that concerning these definitions, first of all, they are the only definitions we have in this are a page full of definitions concerning sexual issues, and I don't know why we need a page full of definitions concerning sexual issues. Secondly, these definitions came from Oklahoma code, not from Idaho code, and some of them have been changed from Oklahoma code, so they are, in fact, not applicable legally in this state. We had addressed this by referencing the entire Idaho code, which was harmful to minors. Then if you add taken as whole or in part, which I voted against, if you put in part, you are violating state and federal law that it's talking about obscenity, which does not have in part, it's taken as a whole. And then if you add the word any, you have set us up. I am not certain about this because I'm not an attorney, but I would suspect you have set us up for incredible litigation because that opens us up for a censorship.
Trustee Boss?
This is a policy for purchase of books. This is not a criminal code. We're not the Idaho legislature writing criminal code. We never said we're going to turn you into, call the police and turn you into the sheriff or anything. We just said we're not buying a book that has any of this. And we're spelling it out very clearly. And we are free to say taken as a whole or in part, and it's not a problem. We are just saying what books we are going to buy or not buy. We can't buy all the books in the world, and we're not going to buy one that has any of this in part. And it's not a criminal issue. It should not be anything somebody could take us to court over. We're not saying we're going to turn you into the sheriff.
Okay, and our attorney will do a legal review of the whole thing, and if there's a problem with that, he will let us know. Director?
Sure. I had a couple of points. Recently, our ICRED liability insurance made some changes relating to library materials, and they specifically cite this code, 18 and the obscenity and that. So I would strongly recommend that in order to be clear in instruction to staff that we cite the same codes that we would be held responsible to with our insurance for claims and other items. I would prefer a statement something like the Community Library Network Board and staff use for purpose of this policy, Idaho code definitions found in 1815-14 of student materials. Definitions for the purpose of this policy include, but not limited to, minor nudity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement, harmful to minors, material, performance, promote, and knowingly. We can make a link in our policy and include it as well. Again, that's one paragraph. The amount of effort and space in our policy that these definitions that are not consistent is concerning. I would say the in part is also very much a concern to me. I read the letter C
And if you read part of a material or part of a performance lacks serious literary, scientific, medical, artistic, or political value for minors, then it's going to be considered not qualifying as for a purchase or harmful. And I do not believe that that is the intention of that statute or the purpose of public libraries. Section Code 332701 says the purpose of libraries is essentially hereby declared by the state of Idaho as part of the provisions for public education to promote the establishment and development of public library services for all the people of Idaho. By so declaring, the state acknowledges that the ability of the citizens to access information has a critical impact on the state's educational success, economic development, provision for an informed electorate, and overall quality of life. So again, I would strongly recommend, since we are no longer covered for library materials with our liability insurance and ICRIMP, based on some content or possible claims, I think it's important for staff in clarifying the actual Idaho code, not a code from anyone else.
All right, Trustee Blank?
I'm very concerned because we don't have the insurance coverage or the financial wherewithal to deal with litigation that could come about because of this. I'm very concerned.
Okay, as stated before, our attorney will review this for legal soundness. Do we have consensus on adding the words "any of" in that first paragraph so that it would read, or the last section would read, "has any of the following characteristics," and also accepting the entire section with that change?
I had a question that I raised my hand several times.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I know that a trustee said before that we're going to see it in here somewhere, but this, all of what we're maybe trying to approve right now is for the entire library, correct?
Yes.
So you couldn't have an adult book with any of this in it?
It says under the section harmful to minors. So
Correct. Under this section, harmful to minors, but that doesn't say the kids section or the teen section. This, to me, this makes it sound like any book coming in.
Okay, well, I don't think we'd be able to do that, so I'm sure that the attorney will catch that in the end. So do we have consensus on adding? No?
Okay, I think listening to the library director's observation, we need to take C and move it as part of the last part of sentence B, because at the top, if we're going to say any performance taken as a whole it doesn't have any of the following characteristics, it doesn't fit all by itself as a standalone bullet, because that means any item coming into the library, if it doesn't have serious literary, scientific, medical, artistic, or political value, can be purchased. So I tend to think maybe we should just have an A and a B and bring that sentence up to the end of bullet B.
Okay, so just remove the C and put that sentence.
I would just point out that the actual statute says nothing herein contained is intended to include or prescribe any matter which, when considered as a whole and in context in which it is used, possesses serious literary, artistic, political, and scientific value for minors according to the prevailing standards in the adult community with respect to what is suitable for minors. So again, I would strongly recommend that we actually not create statutes, but actually cite them. And I would also say that one of the meanings on here that was not addressed is knowingly, which means having general knowledge of or reason to know, or a belief or reasonable ground for belief which warrants further inspection or inquiry. And so the current definitions do not attribute anything further we knowingly or unknowingly, which I think is a deliberate omission.
Chair,
Okay, so, yes.
Trustee Robinson did pose this question last meeting, and I had prepared to address it under the attorney education portion today. but the taken as a whole or in part language is a critical issue in determining how we draft this policy. It initially comes from the Roth test, which turned into the Miller policy, and that was the adult obscenity standard, which is not what governs selection of materials for minors, and that also has a bifurcation according to their age on what's appropriate. And so that's why this provision of lacks material performance lacks a serious with those additional requirements, because that's a redeeming factor of the work that they would consider as a whole. And so there's a whole lot of case law on this, and it's not appropriate to get into it right now. The court says it's a tortured history, and also a concurrence in one of the latest state of Utah Supreme Court cases states there is no standard for what obscenity for minors is right now. And so it is not super clear. And so we do definitely put some thought into this in the in whole or in part discussion as it relates to this section. So I'm encouraging more discussion there around that. And I could follow up with these specific legal requirements and provide more at a later date as well.
Sure.
Trustee Claus?
So I needed a clarification on what Trustee Hanley was saying. Move C to D, but that's under the word nudity. I don't know.
Yeah, bravo.
Move C up to B, so it's just part of B. So we should probably take one thing
So
at a
it's
time.
part of D?
Yeah, so B would just read, it would just go, C would be moved up.
Oh, okay.
So do we have consensus on the one change?
I'm good with it.
The change being,
Moving C up, and so it would be part of B.
is that the second C or the first C?
The first one.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, so consensus, Trustee Hanley?
Yes, aye.
Okay, and I would approve that.
Nay, on my part.
Okay, so we have consensus that C, the material, or we'll take out the letter C and just add the material or performance lacks serious literary, and the rest of that sentence will just be added to the B section at the end of it. All right, the other question was any of adding that. We never reached consensus on that. So the very first sentence, the end of that first paragraph would read, has any of the following characteristics. Do we have consensus on that?
Would it be either, since there are only two left?
Again, Chair Hodgson, this paragraph tends to mimic some of the legal tests that's in a theme of the cases, and it's a conjunctive. And so what this paragraph appears to me to be saying is that although it may implicate slightly A or B, if it does have a serious literary, scientific, medical, artistic, or political value for a minor, it may redeem the quality of it being otherwise obscene. Does it make sense? So the difference would be what they call in the case law girly mag versus an anatomy and physiology textbook. It could have the same content, but taken as a whole, the same image would not be obscene. And so that's why A, B, and C is in the conjunctive and not the disjunctive. And so if we turn taken as a whole has the following characteristics, it would require that A, B, and C all be present. Does that make sense? So if we collapse element C into B, then it tends to kind of trail off, and in my mind, it doesn't.
Okay, so it should be separated?
Yeah, element A, element B, and element C, right? And so when it's taken as a whole, it has the following characteristics. C is it lacks a serious literary or scientific, medical, or artistic, political value. So if it does have A, and it does have B, and it otherwise lacks a serious literary quality, then it would qualify as harmful to minors.
Okay. All right. So considering our attorney's counsel, do we have consensus to move it back to the way it was, so it B and C are separate?
Yes.
I am also. Trustee Robinson?
And also considering counsel, I think it'd be a great idea to remove all of the definitions and just put in Idaho Code 18, 1513, 1514, and 1515. Replace all of the red definitions.
Okay, so just to make it clear, Janelle, that we didn't have consensus on that. I'm sure you already got it. I just,
both consensuses.
okay, thank you. I just wanted to make it, it just seems like the chair should state it.
I got it.
Okay. All right, so back to the, has any of the following characteristics at the very end of that first paragraph?
Can you ask for consensus of what I just asked for? Removing all of this and putting in Idaho code?
Oh, okay. Do we have consensus on removing all the definitions and putting
No,
Idaho code?
No.
no,
Yes.
And I do not either, so we do not
Thank
have
you.
consensus. I'm sorry, thank you for reminding me because my brain gets going in too many different directions. Okay, so back to the adding the words any of to the last partial sentence there in that first paragraph. So it would read, has any of the following characteristics. Do we have consensus on that?
was that in line with legal?
I think so.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Yes.
not. I think that we are walking into legal trouble.
Okay, well, and that's, our attorney will come back with his review on that. Okay, so Ploss is a yes.
Yes.
Blank is a no. Robinson, did you have a?
I want to go back to our original, our 11-422 policy, so.
Okay, all right, well then I am for it too, so we have consensus to add the words any of the last part of that first paragraph, so it reads, has any of the following characteristics. All right, anything else on that section? Trustee Henley?
Going farther down the same page, page 2, it comes under nudity means, and it says showing, and I think it would be appropriate maybe for that, for the next 3 bullets, A, B, and C, to say, or descriptions of, because, you know, books are primarily words, not normally primarily pictures, and I think that you could have a very, we'll call it obscene book, just by words, not necessarily. So I think showing or descriptions of, and it goes through that one. The next one, showing or the description of, and the last one, depiction or description of. I think that would tighten it up a little bit.
Depiction or showing of, the last one? Is that what you
Basically
said?
depiction on each one of them. And the last one just or depiction. I'm sorry, or description, each one. So adding the word or descriptions or description for every one of those, A, B, and C.
Okay, so it's the same words for all
Yes.
3, or descriptions of. All right, Trustee Ploss?
So we have this in the very first sentence. Under this section, harmful to minors means any quality, any description, exhibition, presentation, and then it goes through and defines these words. So nudity is already covered as one of these things, and it's talking about description, exhibition, presentation, representation. I don't think we need to add anything.
Okay, so you're good with leaving it as is?
So I would just read the definition of nudity from the
Go ahead,
statute.
Director.
Nudity means the showing of the human male or female genitals, pubic area, or buttocks with less than a full or opaque covering or the portion thereof below the top of the nipple, or the depiction of the covered male genitals in a discernibly turgid state. So I would stick with the definition of nudity, and it does not spell out a description. It's the showing of.
Okay, I'm good with adding or descriptions of to all 3 of them. If it's not legally defensible, then I'm sure our attorney will let us know. Trustee Robinson.
And again, I already asked this, but is this going to be specifically for children, the children's books? Because I still don't see that.
That's spelled out in a different section, right? Okay. All right, well then, do we have consensus on retaining that entire definitions as used in this policy section?
I have one more
as
thing. I
amended.
just had one more thing I wanted to say.
Okay, Trustee Blank.
So I think that it's patently obvious what's going to happen with the consensus vote on this section. So we will very likely be putting in our policy Oklahoma code as amended by our newest trustees. And that is of profound concern to me.
Okay, so do we have consensus on that entire section?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
No.
Okay, and I am a yes also, so we do have consensus on adding that entire definition as used in this policy as amended. All right, so the next section is selection process. Trustee Fox?
I realized the mistake I made before when I sent this out, but I didn't want to confuse people by sending another, but
Thank you.
in the purple sentence, I added books and
Can you please tell us where you're talking about, what purple section?
under selection,
Page 3.
page 3, under selection process.
I don't see purple.
You may not have the right one.
Okay, books and materials with content harmful to minors as defined in this policy. I'd like to strike the word R2 and put shall. So shall be excluded from selection and acquisition for the libraries, and then insert, this was a mistake on my part, insert the word non-adult collection. So libraries non-adult collection.
Okay, so it would read, books and material with content that is harmful to minors as defined in this policy shall be excluded from selection and acquisition for the library's non-adult collection?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have consensus on that one sentence?
Yes.
And the proposed change. I would recommend going back to our original policy that says materials for minors under the age of 18 that violate Idaho codes, with those listed out, be excluded from the juvenile and young adult collections. So I think it's saying the same thing. That's what the change would be. And we're not going to have those in the minor, because that is our current policy.
Okay, well, if it says the same thing, then I'm good with the purple. Yes, Trustee Blas?
If there's an adult book written for an adult, I don't want that put in a non-adult section. So the way it was written before, it was a book written for minors, which I assume means the characters of the book. If they're 12-year-olds, it's written for minors. If it's a book written for adults, it still is harmful to minors, and it shall not be selected and acquisition for the library's non-adult collection. It doesn't mean you can't put it in the adult. It just means any book written for adults cannot go in the minors.
So I would also point out that this does not address any of our ebook or digital materials, and that this is our selection policy for everything. And so for me, in terms of giving instruction to staff, I think it makes more sense that, again, that we're excluding from the juvenile and young adult collections materials that minors that violate those statutes. And again, I think it's better to cite the statutes, which the staff can then refer to. So my preference would not be to, again, so we have our insurance criteria for what we need to follow. We have the state law statutes, and now we have a completely separate policy with completely different terms, but very similar terms, but just slightly different.
The member will please state his point of order.
We're talking about the wording in this section. We've already agreed to the definition. We're not going back to the previous discussion we had for a long time about the definitions. We're using those definitions called harmful to minors, and we're applying them in this section. So let's not spend time talking about Idaho code.
If I could just clarify.
Point of order, like.
I would like to find out if it is acceptable in parliamentary procedure for points of order to interrupt discussion, especially mid-sentence.
Actually, that is exactly what you're supposed to do. No. You're supposed to interrupt with the point of order.
It is, my understanding is that it is not to be disruptive.
Yes.
It is not to prevent discussion.
Yes.
And the free exchange of ideas and opinions. And just to finish my sentence, in the board-approved 11.4 policy, it is under selection process that I was stating. The last paragraph of that section says forms of expression, and it states materials for minors under the age. So I was specifically addressing the selection process and what was previously stated, which I believe is more clear.
Okay, so in Robert's Rules of Order, under the point of order section, it says to do so, you stand up, which we don't do because we're a small board, interrupt the chair or speaker if necessary, and without waiting to be recognized, call out point of order. So that is what we're supposed to do.
So the purpose of Robert's Rules of Order is to prevent chaos, to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. It's not to prevent discussion, which I believe it is currently being used as.
Right, it's to make things flow, but if somebody is doing something, if they're making a motion that they're not supposed to, then that we're supposed to follow that point of order. So, Trustee Blas?
We already agreed by consensus, or actually my motion, I think, to remove the deleted yellow sections. And that's this section that you're referring to. We're not discussing it now. We're discussing the part that is not in yellow deleted under
Actually,
selection.
That was an amendment and it didn't pass. So we have not deleted, and actually in previous meetings, we have deleted some of the yellow sections, and I'm not sure which ones they are and which ones they aren't. Anyway, but the question right now is that on the purple section there, books and material with content that is harmful to minors as defined in this policy shall be excluded from selection and acquisition for the library's non-adult collection. Do we have consensus on that?
Yes.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely not.
Okay, and I am in agreement with it, so we have consensus on that. That section is added and as amended. Trustee Robinson.
So we're still on selection process, all right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, the community library network seeks to purchase a wide range of materials that meets the informational, educational, The selection of materials is generally made by library staff based on clear and unambiguous written policies that infuse our mission statement and accepted goals and priorities. And it goes on. I just want to make sure if that sentence is going to be in this policy, that it's true. And I would like to know if the director and if the director thinks that the staff would call this a clear and unambiguous, sorry, it's hard to say that word for me, policy. And I'm asking for that to be answered.
So I've been discussing this with Assistant Director to prepare preparation for implementation. I would start by saying, no, I don't believe it is clear, and then I will turn it over to her.
Idaho Code 181513 states that it is hereby the policy of the legislature to restrain distribution, promotion, or dissemination of obscene material or of material harmful to minors. And our current material selection policy states that forms of expression that are unprotected by the First Amendment will not knowingly be included in the collection. And unprotected materials are those that have been declared obscene by a U.S. court of law. Our current policy is very clear where we stand and how we can implement it. We cannot disseminate material that has been declared obscene by the U.S. Court of Law. And the material selection policy draft at the bottom of page 3, where it says appropriateness, it says appropriateness for minors is determined by, in the opinion of the board, or library staff. And my question is, how will this be implemented? Is the board or is it library staff who will be deciding appropriateness? And who is defining appropriateness? The revised policy clearly lacks direction for implementing it. For example, using the term inappropriate for minors, which is vague and not a legal definition. Who is defining what inappropriate is? And is it the definition of board members, individual library staff, or is there a legal standard that we're supposed to understand and prescribe to? And using the statement that the policy is clear and unambiguous is the exact opposite of what this new revised policy is. It's not up to us, it's up to the U.S. Court of Law to determine what is obscene and what is appropriate.
Sure.
Trustee Ploss?
So I'd like to address a couple things. One is most of these books have not gone before a court of law to be declared that they are meeting this Idaho code. So the courts have not looked at the books and decided it. Second is this inappropriate for minors is not in this policy, it's in the other one. This one is called harmful to minors, and that's what the whole definition is. We just got done going through.
At the bottom of page 3, it is there. Am I not? It's there.
It's the
It
very
says
final
harmful to minors.
appropriateness of subject. For purposes of criteria, appropriate means determination of whether such content is in the opinion of the board or library staff harmful to minors.
Harmful to minors is defined in this policy.
Where?
The whole definition section?
But that's not a
First-
legal definition.
Yeah.
That is Oklahoma code as amended by a trustee.
It's the
The
definition
very
that
first
we are
sentence
choosing
of the
for library.
definition says, under this section, harmful to minors means blah, 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 blah. And we're only referring to that definition.
I would just like to say that Vanessa asked for staff opinion and I just gave my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Robinson?
Okay, in that same vein, under material section policy dated 11/4/22, have books been reevaluated and moved? And I would like an answer from the staff, please.
It's not part of this.
I asked that question before and I was told that 0 books had been moved.
That is
and that-
incorrect. I don't know where that
Okay.
information came from, but we have moved books to a higher level, like when we've had reconsiderations, we've moved books from juvenile up to young adult or from young adult to adult. So that is the correct information.
Okay. All right, so I would like consensus on the selection process, the entire section
I have a
as.
point of order, if you don't mind.
Oh.
My first one of the day, I think. I'd like to move that we extend our discussion
Oh, that,
on this particular subject, if that's necessary, because we're already 2 hours into it, and I think that's how
Okay.
much time was allotted for this.
yeah, actually, that wouldn't be a point of
Is that
order.
it? It's not? Okay, I'm sorry. I withdraw my point of order.
All right, so selection process, the entire section as amended with the strike throughs and everything, and the 2 things that we've already amended. Do we have consensus on approving that section for the draft?
This is the upper,
I would just have
The
one
entire selection process?
no, I have one. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I think she was.
The director was, yes, director, please.
I just wanted to make sure that the board is aware of the ICRIM policy, and it was added this year. It's not just to our library, it's to libraries and entities around the state that are covered for liability for ICRIM. Under library materials, it does say, stemming from allegations pertaining to any material assessed through a library, including a book, drawing, painting, film, video, audio, or digital medium, which is claimed to be harmful to a minor, whether derived through the medium of reading, observation, or sound, in which the content of such material is alleged to be obscene, pornographic, depict nudity of any kind, sexual conduct of any kind, or sadomasochistic abuse of any kind, harmful to minors, or in violation of any section contained in Title 18, Chapter 15, or any other local, state, or federal law or rule now in existence or adopted in the future pertaining to the protection of minors. In addition, we, which is ICRIM, will not will not cover any claim brought for enforcement or compliance with state law pertaining to duties relating to the protection of minors. So I understand that the board wants to move things forward quickly, and they're putting a significant obligation on our attorney, but I'm just going to again say that this is a significant change in liability coverage, and the board needs to be very cautious in revising the statement and these policies as they relate to harmful to minors.
Sure.
Okay, attorney, does that apply to weeding or does that apply to acquisition? Okay, in the meantime, okay, trustee Claus.
Before we end, I'd like to move that we approve the PLOS draft with the changes we have discussed.
We didn't finish.
Yeah, we have a motion that has already been approved that we will do this orderly section by section, so that's what we have to do.
Can we just approve the whole thing? I'm asking to approve it. Vote on it.
I would like to have something related to our digital media added for this election. It's not clear to me whether like our overdrive and our e-books and e-audiobooks would also be requiring to meet this election policy. The needs for selection and deselection for those collections are different than I'm going to say our physical spaces and collections. And so I think the board is really focused on that.
Okay, trustee Hanley.
In response to that, I think material covers that ground. It says books and material, and there's somewhere it describes what material is. It could be digital, you name it, all kinds of different media. The other thing I was going to say was I would suggest we delete one bullet in that list. It's duplicating, it's duplicative. It says appropriateness of, it's the bottom third or so. Appropriateness of subject and style for intended library users is a duplication of the last bullet. So I suggest that we drop that one. Other than that, I have no other changes in mind.
So the way that I would read this policy is if we have a adult romance novel that talks about a nude scene in description, then no one would be able to use our online ebooks because we do not have a way to prevent minors or adults that may and children that may. Like I said, there is a lack of clarity in this, and so I would strongly recommend that the board specify some items in both deselection as well as selection.
Okay, so just dealing with something real quick, the appropriateness of subject and style for intended users, since that is stated again later, do we have consensus to remove that?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so by consensus, that is the single line that says appropriateness of subject and style for intended library users is taken out.
I would like
Okay,
to.
so actually, I think our attorney is going to answer the question.
Sure, but I would defer to Trustee Blank if she was in line.
Trustee Blank?
I would appreciate the nays being also the assumption that the majority board is always going to rule. That should not negate the fact that that those of us who would like to say nay can say nay.
Okay, well, I said by consensus, so I'm really not sure about the procedure on that. If you just say at that time, no.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah, no, I don't want to take anything on.
Okay, and Trustee Robinson, did you want to chime in on that?
No, I don't.
Okay. I guess we adjourn, or not adjourn, we break for 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, we're adjourning for 5 minutes.
Does that give people enough time to use the bathroom?
It should.
It didn't last time. People were standing in line. Staff was standing in line, so I would.
Okay, well, we're breaking for 5 minutes.
But we're coming back for this. So.
Yes.
That was cold water. Just
Come back to order, and our attorney was going to speak.
I think there was a question specifically pertaining to an exclusion in the new iCorrect policy. It it's on page 20 of the exclusions, and it was number 25 the director quoted. And the way this, and that was an update this year that wasn't contained in last year's iCurrent policy. And it's section 4, general exclusions. And under paragraph A states that unless it's provided in another area of the policy, because exclusions, interestingly enough, can add coverage. It's really weird how these insurance policies work. But that paragraph 25 is a general exclusion for claims related to this policy as a whole, essentially. And so if one of the non-governmental organizations that was contacted related to this action decides the policy doesn't meet snuff federal law, they sue us, then iCrimp would not cover the cost of that defense related to that lawsuit. That answers the question for you.
Trustee Robinson?
Counsel, so who exactly, if iCrimp doesn't cover it, how is it covered?
How, if iCrimp doesn't?
If iCrimp doesn't cover the cost of the litigation or the potential payout, who covers that?
But my understanding of the state statute is that the district is still responsible for defending the district. It just would not be covered under an indemnification provision of the insurance.
So you mean the district is the library, the CLN?
Correct.
So we discussed what the carry forward fund is used for. We have 2 months, so less than 800,000 typically, and much less this year, under 500. That is for emergency and unanticipated expenses.
And does the supplemental policy we have with the other company, do they cover this?
My understanding is that's an employment practices liability policy that doesn't speak directly to this issue, but I can look further into that.
It does cover directors and officers or
Right,
any
right.
action that.
That's just kind of a sub. Okay, so that's true that there's a DNO provision that could provide certain coverages, but likely if the district got sued for implementing this policy as a facial challenge or an as-applied challenge under the First Amendment, whether it's for adult materials or for a 15-year-old or for a 6-year-old under the First Amendment in federal court, that would probably not be covered by a D&O. That would be more you individually if they tried to go after you. Typically, you'll be added in your official capacity in that suit or the district alone. So my general answer, it depends, but probably not covered.
I'm sorry, when you're saying you, are you talking about us?
The directors and officers insurance as it applies to each individual trustee, that's likely not implicated. So there would be no coverage, probably. Is that the answer to your question?
Can I ask a question?
Trustee Blank?
Okay, so do we get sued individually or as a unit?
The district, more than likely. But we can get sued even if we have a good policy. So the goal here is to have a very good discussion, keep whatever policy we eventually decide to implement well within the bounds of what's acceptable under First Amendment jurisprudence, and then we should be okay. So we don't want something that's clearly an outlier of where we think the trend of the law is going to go, because it's not clear exactly what the United States Supreme Court will say regarding a definition of obscenity, because to my knowledge, a specific case like this has not been brought before the United States Supreme Court. So we look at the rationale from all the different cases and make sure we're dialed into that.
Wouldn't that apply more to the weeding process? Don't we have more broad discretion for acquisition?
There's much more broad discretion related to acquisition, but there's still some traps related to prior restraint and First Amendment protected speech and what exactly obscenity is. And there's visual depictions of obscenity. There's descriptions. I mean, so it's complicated. So there's different standards, and so we need to identify those standards while we're discussing that policy.
I would maybe add that last time you provided some training relating to Little Villano County, and in that you had cited and said that their library's 2-year public history and statements made by several board members could seriously weaken the argument that there was substantial motivation in arriving at removal or relocation decisions that were not discriminatory.
And I would just say that I'm concerned about, and should the board individually have any concerns about recent opinions that may have been stated relating to LGBTQIA, homosexuality, lesbian, sexually explicit, politics like Marxism, and non-Christian beliefs.
Trustee Hanley?
I don't recall any of those last categories of people, if you will, being discussed in this policy anywhere. So I'd like to move on.
So
Yeah, I
I
don't
think that
really
Kate
care.
did talk about like the previous political running on the board. If you read the whole thing, it talks about quite a bit.
Okay, so I've been a bookworm my whole life, and I love books, and I love libraries, and I don't care what persuasion the book is. If it's sexually inappropriate, if it's sexually explicit, then it's sexually explicit. So, anyway, I want to protect children from things that are damaging to them. Books that a bookstore would be prohibited from selling to a child. I don't think that we should be giving to children here. If it's, I just don't. Trustee Ploss?
Can we move on with the rest of this so we can just review done?
Okay, so do we have consensus on the selection process as amended in writing and what we've done in this
Yes,
meeting?
Yes.
No.
Katie?
No.
Okay, and I am a yes, so we do have consensus that the entire selection process section is approved as amended. All right, so next we will be discussing, the withdrawal of materials. Does anyone have a problem with not taking that out? Or, well, actually, I guess I should ask, do we have consensus on that whole thing being removed
Yes.
as it is written?
Yeah.
Yes, discussion? Kate Blank?
I'm just going to reiterate what has been said by our staff, is that why we have two policies may not be as workable as trying to keep it into one, and so I'm not in favor of making it into two policies, and I'm very concerned about trying to use two different definitions on selection and deselection.
Okay, Trustee Fox?
So I think it's really clear from what legal counsel went through with this last meeting, last regular meeting. We do need two. We have two different criteria. The criteria, we haven't gone over it yet, for withdrawal is, besides all of the things that were there before about worn out book, so forth, it's inappropriate for minors, which is the Idaho code. So for removing material, it's a different criteria than this definition harmful to minors that we have here. We cannot put the two together.
Okay, so I'm also a yes. Trustee Robinson?
I would prefer what I think is called more collection development and have them together. I think it would be just better that way, but I'm not, as long as there's a policy for both.
Okay, so we have consensus on removing the entire withdrawal of materials section. Next section is gifts. Do we have consensus on leaving it exactly the way it is?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Trustee Blank?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have consensus on that, so that is left the same as it is. The next section is reconsideration of material. Do we have consensus on removing that?
Yes.
Yes, because it's moved into the new withdrawal.
Yep.
Once again, I think that it's inappropriate to make it into two policies.
Is that a yes or no?
That's a no.
Okay, Trustee Robinson?
Mine's the same too. I would prefer them to be one, but they're not.
Okay, and I'm also a yes, so we have consensus on removing the entire reconsideration of material section, and the review of policy, that will be updated when we approve that. So, okay, so then I would entertain a trustee class.
I move that we accept the plus version of the material selection policy as edited.
Take your time.
Policy as edited. Okay, it has been moved to accept the class version of the material selection policy as edited. Trustee Blank?
It has been pointed out that these drafts have constitutional deficiencies, and I am very concerned about moving and accepting this without our attorney looking at it. We put it into place and it sets us up. We have no idea what kind of legal vulnerabilities it sets up for us since we have not had our attorney look this over first.
Trustee Haley?
I think we should, we went through this whole policy, approve it as is with an implementation date, perhaps, after legal review, and hopefully that could be at the next meeting, at our regular meeting, we actually implement this, assuming there were no changes made by council.
Okay, so Trustee Ploss, if you would, if you would withdraw
I'll withdraw if Trustee Hanley states what he just read.
Okay, or we could just do it by consensus. We don't need a motion to send it to the
Change
attorney.
the policy to, or change the move to accept the PLOS draft of the material selection policy as approved.
As amended?
As amended.
Pending legal counsel.
Pending legal counsel review.
Okay, so do we have consensus on sending this as amended to the attorney for legal review?
Yes.
We're not going to vote?
I was a.
I thought it was a motion.
Oh. Okay, so you withdrew, okay, so the motion was yours then?
I understand that.
I got lost.
Okay, so he withdrew his motion.
Well, I can restate it.
I
You can
can just,
restate it, if you don't mind.
okay,
If I could, I would strongly recommend that the motion be phrased that legal will review, and I would also recommend that staff also be given that opportunity to review. I began earlier today talking about policy malpractice. One of the items is that the board is really needing to examine other library policies for contradictions before creating or revising a policy. The language needs to match. And so the implementation needs to be consistent for staff to avoid any further confusion. Specifically, the policies, the children in the library policy talks about everyone, regardless of age, has full access to library materials and filtered internet. The member confidentiality policy states American Library Association's Code of Ethics, we protect library users' rights to privacy. The Library Cards for Minors policy discusses access to the library's collection is the responsibility of the parent or legal guardian and is not dependent on the minor child's age. So at this point, all I would recommend is that the draft policy be sent for staff and legal review.
okay, so Trustee Ploss, you're changing your motion or re-motion to approve the Ploss draft of materials selection policy to send to legal counsel for review. Do you want to add staff review? I think that could be valuable.
No.
Okay, Trustee Robinson?
I would like the motion to be, I guess maybe I could amend the motion?
Move to amend.
Move to amend that it be sent to legal for review and then brought back to the board. And, I'm sorry, to legal and staff and brought back to the board. Because before when we had a motion to pass and send it to legal, when it came back, it was like already passed. It was like weird. So
that was the way that I had stated it. This one is not stated that way.
Okay, so that's my amendment.
So I would also just say, when I mean staff, it says in this description from the ICFL and the trustee manual that the board should also consult with the public library consultant, ICFL. So when I say staff, I'm also meaning professionals in the industry, the ICFL board, on behalf of the library.
So we have to send every policy to them?
If you want to read the section in policy, yes, it strongly recommends that the board, it says, like, is it an illegal policy? It's important that the board is familiar with federal and state laws affecting the library. When in doubt, it's a good idea to contact the library's ICFL public consultant. Is this a sloppy policy? Your ICFL public library consultant is here to help boards learn the form of good policy. I've already expressed things like,
Call the point.
Point of order? Is that?
Point of order.
Okay, go ahead.
The motion is to approve this. There's an amendment to include staff. We need to vote on that unless there's other discussion.
Point of order, she was addressing my amendment of sending it to staff.
Yeah, so actually I need to state the amendment. So if I have this right, you move to be sent, or well, let's see, to add the words to be sent to legal and staff. Was that?
Yes.
Okay, and then.
And brought back to the board.
It's always brought back to the board, I think. So.
And to clarify that it's not in any way changing existing library policy.
Right.
Okay.
We're just sending it to you. Okay, so it has been moved to amend the main motion, add the words to be sent to legal and staff. So the entire motion, if the amendment is approved, would be to approve plus draft of materials selection policy to send to legal counsel for review. Sorry, so that would only be part of that sent to legal counsel and staff for review. That sound right?
Yeah.
And to legal counsel.
Yeah,
So I'm just adding the words and staff.
And to be clear, because I don't normally amend, so I guess my amendment doesn't change the original motion to pass it, to pass the policy. Because the original.
No, because we still have to vote on that. Right now, we would just be voting on
Okay.
the amendment to add
Okay.
and staff.
Thank you.
Or insert the words and staff in between legal counsel and for review.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Another hand.
Trustee Blank?
Could you repeat what the entire motion with the amendment would be?
Yes. It has been moved to approve the PLOS draft of material selection policy to send to legal counsel and staff for review. So right now, we're just voting on the amendment to add the words and staff, or insert those words in between counsel and for. So if there's no further discussion, we will vote on adding that amendment and staff. All those in favor say aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
I'm going to have to vote, aye. So the motion passes.
And to be clear, Chair Audison, that is solely to send it to legal and staff for review, not
review.
Okay.
Yes. So that's, the amendment has passed, and now the main motion is to approve the PLOS draft of material selection policy to send to legal counsel and staff for review. All those in, Trustee Blank.
Yeah, that's discussion for the whole motion at this point in time. So we are approving, this motion approves to send it to legal and staff.
Yes,
period.
just sending it.
Okay, that sounds,
This motion is.
no, that's what it said. It says to,
Your amendment was passed.
Yes, mine was.
So now it's
so
part
what
of the
it
main
said,
motion.
okay, what you said to me was to approve to send to legal and staff for review. So what we would be doing is that we are approving that it gets sent to legal and staff for review.
Yes.
Is that correct? So we are not approving the motion itself.
We are not approving the policy. We are just
Policy.
approving
I'm sorry.
sending
Yeah,
it.
okay, we're not, okay.
Yeah.
We've got a question.
Yes.
The motion was class move to approve the class draft of materials selection policy. So it's approving the draft.
To send to legal counsel and staff for review. So the intent is just to send it. That's clear to everyone?
Yeah, we have to approve what we have to send it.
No, we don't. We can send the draft.
We can just agree to send the draft. But yeah, we're not,
Okay.
You can
Were you-
approve a new draft to be sent to me without approving the policy. And so I just want to be very clear that we are not amending library policy in any way. The approval relates solely to the current working draft, and that's being approved to get sent to us solely, not approved as new policy for the library, correct?
is that your intent?
I can reword it to take out the word
How about-
approved, just approved sending the draft to,
Okay, so,
sending
all
the
right, so
draft.
instead of to approve, we could just write, or say, agree to send PLOS draft of materials selection policy to legal counsel and staff for review. Is that acceptable?
Didn't I say
Edited or
Oh, as
As
edited.
amended maybe, or as edited?
Material selection policy as edited. Okay, so the motion would be, we agree to send PLOS draft of materials selection policy as edited to legal counsel and staff for review. Does that sound right? Okay, Trustee Robinson.
Is it right to just reword it like that, or does he need to retract it and redo the whole motion?
Actually, that probably would be more proper. So, do you want to do that?
I will retract my
Okay, and then I can
motion
just read what I've got right
and
here.
read,
Okay.
and replace it with what Chair reads.
Okay, agree to send PLOS draft of material selection policy as edited to legal counsel and staff for review. Okay, so Trustee Hanley?
I have a concern with sending it to staff. The board has a very explicitly described job according to Idaho statute. And the very second one listed is to establish policies for the administration, operation, and the use of the library or libraries under its control. We worked this policy over. We looked and absorbed what was in the old or the current existing policy. And my concern is this gets kicked down the can, gets kicked down the road, and this is dragged out forever. So I guess would it be proper to put a timeline on this motion? Because I don't want staff to study this, and I'm not saying they will, for the next 6 months. We've been working on this a long time. This is why we were put in office. We've beaten this thing to death. And if legal looks this over, counsel, and says, yes, this looks like an acceptable document, then by golly, I want to go ahead and stamp it approved and be done with it. So there must be, I guess, a timeline or some type of a time limit attached to this.
Okay, so someone could amend it to insert the words within 1 week at the end.
I think more than one.
I'd like to amend,
Trustee Potts?
I'd like to amend the motion to add to be returned at the next regular meeting for review.
Well, we would need to look at it before that. So that's why I was saying 1 week, because we're, what, 2 weeks out?
Okay. Within a week, so that we can discuss it, or so review at the next meeting,
Okay,
a week before the next meeting.
okay, which would be within 1 week from now. Okay, so you are making that motion to amend. Okay, so it has been moved to amend the main motion to add the words within 1 week to the end of that sentence. Trustee Robinson?
Could you please make sure that council and staff could have that done within a week?
I was gonna say, it's probably gonna take me a week to just go through all the edits that were made at this meeting and to make sure I have absolute clarity, reviewing the notes and then rewatching the video. It's probably gonna take me a week just to put the new policy in place with the changes that were made today. ICFL, I'm not sure what their timeline is. I would respectfully give them 2 weeks typically.
Sure.
Okay, council?
I can start as, I have a general idea we have, but I won't have the draft. And my analysis could turn on one word or one and so I would need a clean draft of what was proposed to start really the analysis at that point. Not start it, but you know what I mean, apply it. So I can't start until I get a clean draft, I guess.
Okay, so then before our next meeting?
What's the date?
Because I don't want to call another special meeting.
It's 2 weeks.
Sure, question. Go ahead.
So just,
I think we can have a clean draft, but I don't know that we can have it all the way through legal review or respond through the commission in that amount of time. I guess what we can do is work as quickly as we can, but I would hate for us to reduce or make an error in something that wasn't looked at that needs to be reviewed. This is a very complicated matter. This is, I'm going to say, not been done in Idaho. There's no other experience like this that we can draw upon. Idaho code is different than others, but there are federal and other aspects that need to be reviewed. I would hate to put that kind of pressure on our legal counsel to get it done rather than to do it well.
who was first?
I think I was.
Okay, Trustee Hamlin?
I believe I was. I have just guessing. I've been typing for 40 or 50 years. This policy, as amended, could be produced and provided to council tomorrow if someone has 2 hours to do the job. It doesn't mean it's approved, but if council needs our draft, our amended draft, as we just went through this whole thing, in hand before they can review it for legal purposes, then I see no reason why this can't be turned over to council tomorrow. These are not extensive. Basically, you delete all the yellow. It's already got lines on it. There's only a few words, add it and delete it through the entire document. And so I guess if council got it within the next day or two, how long would council like in order to review this? Because obviously we would need to align staff and council review timelines.
Okay, so Trustee Ploss, could you provide the digital version of?
Yeah, I was going to offer, I can work on it tonight. I did the last edits and I've got written down here, and I can I don't know who needs to review what I do to make sure I got it, but I can get it done tonight or tomorrow morning.
Okay,
And I don't care about IC, whatever it is, FL or whatever. We said staff. So legal counsel and staff.
Okay, well, I guess that could be amended again. Trustee Blank?
If it is amended, if it is written up by the a trustee, I would like it sent to staff as well to confer that. And we are under the, in Idaho code, we follow the standards of the Idaho Commission for Libraries, and therefore sending it to the Idaho Commission for Libraries is absolutely, I would think, an essential step.
Trustee Hanley?
I'm just curious, previous boards, did they run every policy by the Idaho Commission for Libraries before they approved them?
Good question. Staff?
It's considered a best practice. Council and I were just kind of saying, the more the merrier when it comes to making changes in policies and best practices, learning. I wish they had a time to make the board more familiar with federal and state laws affecting libraries before we made a change to this policy. But they do play a key role in education. They do set the standard for trustees in the state. They are funded by the legislature. They do have governing powers.
Trustee Blank?
I have deep concerns about the illegalities in this policy, that there are potential ones. That has been stated by an attorney in a letter directly to us. And then it says in the manual, it says, when in doubt about the legalities, which a trustee right here is, it is a good idea to contact the library's ICFL public library consultant. it would be far less expensive for us to get some information from ICFL than to have litigation.
Trustee Robinson.
I want to make sure, especially this policy is, all policies are important, but this is a very important one. I really want council and staff, I'll say especially council, to be able to thoroughly look through this. And although I appreciate a trustee giving himself the job to type it up, to send it to council and to staff, I'm not comfortable with that. I think that this needs to be presented by the director. And when I say that, I mean whether the director has somebody under her do it and then through her it goes to council. I think that's the best chain of order for it to get to council. Those are my concerns, and I would like to hear what the attorney has to say on that.
I agree that it should be sent to staff first, just to check, double check. Double check is always a good idea. But he can send the digital version that he already has that we were presented with. It would make it go so much faster.
Yeah, that's fine.
I will send it to the director, and the director can send it out to everybody.
And if the council could say how much time he needs to thoroughly look through this.
I would say it depends on the draft. However, I've done a substantial amount of research leading up to this policy discussion, and I feel fairly prepared to issue an opinion related to it. However, how detailed you want me to get, if I'm having to draft a memo in support of it or hitting every subpart, if it's a yes, am I defending why it's a yes? If it's a no, am I calling out every single reason why I see could be an issue? Am I drafting like we do in the insurance world to set reserves? Am I determining what the risk is, how much liability of that risk do we have, and multiplying it times the maximum exposure we have to give you a probability of success? That's a totally different project. I don't think we'll have to get to that point. I think I could go over it fairly quickly once I have the draft, but there's a lot of subparts packed into that analysis. And I would like to include one of those maybe next meeting on the obscenity as it relates to minors, or the Utah case where it talks about is nudity obscenity for minors, or the material selection set of laws as well as part of that. So that could be part of the board's input. And I certainly, as a attorney for the district, am not going to refuse to consider any information that's presented to me related to this analysis. But I do say that with obviously respect towards what the board says is going to be the objective. So that would be my position. I hate to give you a hard number. I think a couple of weeks would be fine, but it will depend on the draft I get.
And I'll just point out, we just got through the first policy. We didn't get through the other policy. So there's going to be, if we give him another policy in 2 weeks, then it could take longer. If you're reviewing two.
Okay, so did you make the amend or a motion to amend within 1 week? Maybe we could withdraw that.
I want to keep it there so that we can move forward. And if staff doesn't come through in that time, we at least get the legal counsel.
Oh, it could be right, because we're just voting to send it. We're not saying it has to be returned. Okay, so we're keeping them within 1 week.
So can I have clarity on what that means? I've lost a little bit.
Just the amendment
Yes,
means that it has to be sent to legal within a week.
it has to be sent to legal within the week.
No?
No, the amendment was to send it ASAP tonight, tomorrow, with the expectation we get a result back in a week. We'll have to decide the next meeting if we don't get it, whether we go on anyway or what we're going to do. But I agree. I don't want this dragging out because we're talking to all these consultants. So I would like to have that amendment the way I said it, with the expectation that it be returned, the review be returned in a week.
Isn't there discussion on this?
Manager, could you read the amendment?
Plass amended the motion to add the words "to be returned in 1 week" at the end of the motion. So the full motion would read, Plass moved to agree to send the Plass draft of the material selection policy as edited to legal counsel and staff for review, to be returned in 1 week.
To be returned. Okay, so you're saying return from the attorney within 1 week? Because I'm not sure he can do that. It sounded like 2 weeks.
The last thing I would like to get clarity on is since we have received what I would call a threat of litigation related to this policy, I think it's reasonable to perceive that litigation could be imminent. And therefore, in certain circumstances, I would be required to get the client's informed consent to release a report prepared in anticipation of litigation. And so if you would like me to do a review of the policy as a part of this vote, I would like that to also include your understanding that it's your informed consent that I release my report in a public way. Otherwise, if I don't get the organizational client, meaning a majority of the board's informed consent to release that information, I would be prohibited from doing that. So does that make sense? You're authorizing me to give you my recommendation publicly since there's a potential for litigation related to the policy.
Okay, so authorize release of informed consent in a public way. Is that?
Well, I just want you to understand that as that's a part of this vote. If you're directing me to perform an analysis of this draft policy, that it will likely, and I release that publicly, it will likely foreclose that draft would be privileged in anticipation of litigation. And so you would be waiving the attorney-client privilege of that analysis. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure. So that's.
If I come back and I give you a yes or a no, no, I don't recommend this policy. Yes, I do. That's one thing. If I come back and I give you a recommendation with a legal analysis regarding why I'm making that recommendation, then that I need to know, am I getting the organization's consent to do that? Which I would recommend that we give the consent, so that way I don't have to fumble around the rules and wonder what my duty is.
Okay, so did you want us to include that, or you're just saying that's implicit?
I think it would be implicit in this vote.
Okay. All right, Trustee Plass.
So I'd like to change the amendment to say a week or as needed or as required for legal counsel. I want to set the expectation that we'd like it in a week, but I don't want to make it impossible.
Within 1 to 2 weeks, so we could just add a dash and 2 in there and make week plural.
That's fine too.
Okay. Trustee Robinson?
Is there any way we can just word it like, as soon as he completes it? He knows that we want this. I just think adding 1 or 2 weeks or a week, because we need to, I believe the line was light a fire under him or them at one point. I don't think that's needed. He's here at the meeting, council. He knows that we want this back. I don't think that we need to give him a restraint in time if he wants to get it done properly.
Trustee Plass?
The concern is leaving it open-ended for staff. I don't want staff influencing how long this takes. If that's the expectation, 1 to 2 weeks. If the legal counsel needs more time, I'm willing to say as needed.
Trustee Henley?
And I'm trying to understand what we're tasking our council with. I guess what I would like is it's reviewed, that the policy as amended is reviewed not for agreement with what we write and what our policy is, as much as if he sees any legal pitfalls in there, we're violating the law. That's what I'm looking for, because people can disagree with anything and people can sue anybody for anything. I just want to make sure we're not plowing ahead with known exposure in there. So that's what I'm looking for. And time frame wise, I'm flexible on whatever a council can do. So I'm not fixated on a particular date. I just want to make sure this is not unduly delayed, and especially regarding the staff one, because too many consultants weighing in on this thing. It's going to be amended and amended and amended again. So I think it needs to be done in a fairly timely fashion. So
I could just respond. So under the First Amendment, discrimination against the content of speech is subject to strict scrutiny. Even if this draft policy appears not to target content on its face, it's also going to be reviewed by the courts for a content basis when it's applied. So there is tremendous risk for this organization to adopt a significant departure from our current policy, and for me and staff to begin administering and applying this policy. And so I think there needs to be some consideration to the time that it will legitimately take, and the process, which will likely also result in some consultation with legal about how these are implemented. And it's not just one policy, it's now 2 policies.
Okay, so Trustee Ploss, could I substitute an amendment for your amendment that said to be returned in 1 to 2 weeks, that we would just say to be sent and returned ASAP?
Returned by legal counsel as required, or for legal counsel's requirements. I don't want to get staff to hold it up. The legal counsel needs to be the gatekeeper on this if he's ready to go. So returned in 1 to 2, or returned when legal counsel is able to provide it.
Well, you would send it to the whole board, right?
That's up to the board,
Okay.
how that transmittal process occurs. I think you have a good argument to go in and discuss particulars related to litigation under an executive session. I think you can direct me to deliver a confidential report as well as a public report, just a public report, give you a yes or a no. You can tell me not to review it, but my thought process is that I will consider any relevant materials related to this decision and take that into context when I deliver my recommendation. And so I certainly won't foreclose receipt of information as a part of my representation of the board. So yes, I will do the legal analysis, and yes, I will craft the response, but I could use some clarification on what type of deliverable you would like. Would you like me to orally present that at next meeting? Would you like me to draft a memo? Would you like me to make recommendations or further study, or does that make sense? Because I could write a 100-page narrative on this with how many potential issues there are related to First Amendment, as obscenity concerns minors and the state of the law right now, because the justices don't even know where this is going to go. And so my objective doesn't necessarily seem to me right now to tell you what the right answer is, but what are the sideposts of what's acceptable, right? And so I'm looking at what's clearly not, is this acceptable? And that could be a big project. And so I'd like a little guidance on that, on what deliverable you would like.
Okay, so perhaps as much as you feel that we need?
Sure, that's
No?
Sure.
Okay, sorry, Trustee Robinson?
I would love a verbal presentation
Okay.
for it. That's what I would prefer. I mean, you could also hand out memos, but that's what I would prefer, verbal.
Trustee Ploss?
I would ask maybe to even be included in the amendment that he give a confidential report until we see what it is.
Trustee Blank?
I would support verbal, that way we can have questions and answers and get very clear on what he's talking about.
Okay.
Let's see, you got several though. It wasn't consensus.
I heard 2 verbals and a confidential report.
Is there any agreement?
It's okay.
Trustee Hanley?
Can we define the confidential report? Is that a report that council provides to the board in writing, but it's not public information?
Well, I would have to determine at the time whether or not, if we're going to deliver that in executive session, whether or not it's a controversy not yet being litigated, but imminently likely to be litigated. I think that will depend on what the policy I get is. Does that make sense? So if it's a good policy that I think is good to go, I may not be able to ethically support an executive session because I don't think litigation is imminent.
Okay, so we could just cancel or not do the executive session.
I'm totally comfortable giving you a verbal report at next meeting publicly.
Okay.
Good.
All right, so verbal report then. So that was 3 on verbal?
Yes.
Okay, so we have consensus on that. All right, we need a motion to
Move that we extend the meeting 15 minutes.
Okay, is that going to be enough time for getting to our other agenda items? We've only gotten to 1.
I can do an hour.
There's a motion and I have some discussion.
Okay, so 5:30 would be the latest. Okay, do you want to extend it to 5:20?
Okay.
Okay, so it has been moved to extend the meeting to 5:20. All those in favor?
Is this not a discussion?
Okay, go ahead.
What will we be discussing in 20 minutes? We've done this, it's 5 o'clock. To start anything else is gonna take time. And we've been here for 3 hours.
Okay, well, we still need to finish the one section at least, so, and Trustee Robinson?
I do have to leave at 5:15, so.
Okay, all right, it has been moved to extend the meeting to 5:20. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it, and we are now extended to 5:20. All right, so back to the amendment to the main motion. We've got so many things written here. What was your amendment, Trustee Plass? Was it?
Let's just say to have, since he's going to do a verbal, we're giving it to the rest, I forget what the rest of it was, but anyway, to have the council return a report at our next meeting.
Okay, well, I think that's understood, so I don't think we need to make an amendment on that. Do you withdraw it? And we'll go back to the main motion?
Okay.
Okay. All right, so it has been moved to agree to send the PLOS draft of material selection policy as edited to legal counsel and staff for review. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, so it is unanimous, ayes have it, and we will now agree to send the PLOS draft of material selection policy as edited to legal counsel and staff for review. Phew. All right.
Then I move we adjourn.
Has been moved to adjourn, which I don't believe is debatable. So all those in
I thought
favor?
we already moved. I thought we already have. No.
Well, we moved to extend, but I think that she can also move to adjourn. So all those in favor?
No.
Aye.
Okay.
Abstain.
The noes have it, and we are not adjourned. All right. Trustee Fox?
Can we go straight to the next to the last item, discussion on insurance, and then if we have time, we do something else. This is urgent. that we address this and not keep putting it off.
Okay, do we have consensus on switching the order of those last, deselection and discussion on insurance process?
Fine.
Yeah, since I don't know exactly what that is, I don't know how much time it's gonna take.
Okay, well, hopefully it will be quick.
Okay.
All right, so we are now on to discussion on insurance process. Trustee Bloss?
I move that the CLN board direct the board treasurer to work with insurance brokers to obtain full coverage midterm quotes and CLN staff to support the treasurer.
Do you have that written by any chance?
Yep.
Oh, good. Thank you. All right, it has been moved that the CLN board direct the board treasurer to work with insurance brokers to obtain full coverage midterm quotes and CLN staff to support the treasurer. Yes, actually, you should.
I get to explain.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I need to remember that, so you guys just remind
Okay.
me when I forget that the person who makes the motion should get the first turn at discussion.
So we are not fully insured right now. On October 29th, the Friday, we approved to take whatever measly insurance we had. We did a consensus of 4 of us to ask the library director to keep working on getting quotes. A quote came in a request to get information to provide a quote came on October 6th. It got resent again on October 13th. To this day, nothing has been done by the director. The director is not working in the best interest of the library network. We need to get insurance quotes, midterm quotes that would give full coverage. And the trustees have a statute that says we are to insure, the Idaho statutes say we are to make sure the personal and real property and we have insurance. And the treasurer is tasked with doing financial transactions at the direction of the trustees. That's in the statutes. I don't want to spend any more time playing games. I want to go get quotes and I want staff to support the treasurer. And that's what we need to discuss. That's the motion.
Okay, Trustee
Did you need
Robinson?
to read it, or did you already?
I already read it.
Okay.
Actually, I guess I won't take up too much time, but that motion seems like it's 2 different things. And I'm not aware of, you're talking about our treasurer, right? I'm not aware of what is going on. If there's something going on and the treasurer's not being supported, I don't know anything about that.
Well, no, just that we've made several requests of staff since August that they look into Redmond insurance quotes, and that has not been really, it's been put off and put off and put off.
But what does that
So,
do with the treasurer?
I can read it.
Actually, I have a question. Are you willing to do that?
What are we asking her to do?
And
So
she
we-
doesn't have the information to fill out anything.
I'll read the statutes.
Okay.
To make it clear.
So Idaho 33, 27, 20, the powers and duties of the trustees. Item 1G, it has a list of things and it ends with, and to ensure real and personal property of the district. We are to provide insurance. That's our duty. The state of Idaho tasked us with it. And in 33, 27, 22, for treasurer and clerk, first paragraph, it says the treasurer shall supervise all monies raised for the library district by taxation or received by the district, and shall supervise all disbursements of funds of the district by the order of the trustees. The trustees have the authority to ask her to go engage in financial transaction We don't have support from staff. And I'm asking our treasurer to step in and help us, and for the staff to provide her whatever information she needs.
Is it good? Treasurer?
Thank you. I would like to address that. I will say that I have been making a good faith effort to work on behalf of the entity. I have been doing what I consider due diligence in making a request to legal counsel to review a matter of ethical concern, specifically, and.
Point of order.
No, I get to say something.
The motion
Point of
is
order
about,
interrupts.
the motion is about whether we're going to authorize the treasurer to do this or not. I'm not interested in information on this. So we have a motion about the treasurer. That's what we have to talk about.
So I would suggest that an ethical violation, which is in the criminal statute 67-92330 prohibitions or 18-1355 would be a serious consideration, and that the board would be acting recklessly if they did not allow me to continue.
So, council, do you have something to say on that? Shall we let someone else speak while you're looking at it?
I would also point out that the statute that was written or read aloud was not the library's financial management policy. Contracting authority has been listed in the contracting section of the financial management policy, and that does not spell out the treasurer as an individual that can contract on behalf of the district.
Trustee Blank?
That is what I was going to say. It says that the treasurer supervises monies. It doesn't say the treasurer goes out and gets quotes at all. And so asking the circumventing staff looks dangerous.
I would propose a different motion or recommend a proposal of a different motion.
Point of order, we're talking about this motion.
Well, I'd like to read the ethics citation and my concerns.
Okay, well, I want to do what's right, and I don't want to jeopardize the library, but I asked back in August, and that was
So is this a motion? Again, I have a right to say. If you're getting a right to say, I have a right as well. I've just been disparaged publicly and am not giving a good faith effort to clarify. Okay. I believe that it jeopardizes our organization based on ethics and concerns of the law, and you will not listen to me.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disparage you. I think you paused, so I was saying something, but I'll return the floor to you.
Do you want to address anything?
Well, I would just say that that my original recommendation has been and remains that we consider a range and a number of options. And so if we do have a director that's authorized to pursue quotes, that it doesn't need to be one insurance company, one broker. I would like to see who has the best product for the best price. So however we get there is fine with me, but from a legal perspective, there are policies that we have that I want to make sure we're closely following. And I haven't had time to chew through this, but I'm not clear that authorizing the treasurer to perform a function that likely falls under the administrative team would be appropriate under the financial management policy. So I would like to, before I give my official opinion on that, I would like to chew through whether our financial management policy speaks to that issue. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like I don't have a hard answer on that, but it does seem to be section 3 under page 1 that talks about financial responsibilities related to risk management, contracting, budget administration, account operations fall to the administrative team, which consists of the director, the assistant director, and the business manager. And so that, and also combined with the 1G from the statute you quoted that allows the board to ensure real and personal property I'm not sure real and personal property necessarily encompass employment practices liability, or, so it's not entirely a black and white answer, but I have caution. My spidey sense here is going up that this may not comply with the financial management policy. So I would like some discussion on that before the board votes, please.
So I would recommend, just to be clear with the board, I'm very happy to get more quotes, but I need to issue some caution. The authority for getting a contract, hiring a broker, putting before the board an option or several options, all of that work needs to be done by the director or staff. It cannot have interference from the board. And specifically what I have concerns about is that no officer or employee shall conspire with a vendor or its agent, and no vendor or its agent shall conspire with an officer or employee to influence or attempt to influence the award of a contract, or to deprive or attempt to deprive a vendor of a contract. So to be clear, I have received requests from multiple brokers to give them additional information. And this board only focuses on one broker. And there's been a tremendous amount of communication between the agent of that brokerage and this board. I'm also concerned about retaliation for past official action. A person commits a misdemeanor if he harms another by any unlawful act in retaliation for anything unlawfully done by the latter in the capacity of a public servant. If you are retaliating against me because I am getting multiple quotes, then that is a misdemeanor, and that is an ethics violation. I'm also concerned that, compounding these recent issues that I brought to legal attention, that there was an article in the paper about the financial disclosures from the Idaho Secretary of State that this insurance broker that continues to be named donated to political parties. So all of that information is deeply concerning. My recommendation for this board is to allow me to initiate another brokerage and to get 3 separate entities working on behalf of this, and to bring to the board recommendations for additional insurance moving forward. I strongly encourage the board to step back rather than to lead in. The clear definition of the functions of the board and the library director are being questioned. And again, you have already put that authority on me for contracting. And so I'm happy to move forward, but as by way of explanation, why I have not responded is that I believe it puts us in additional legal risk, and I'm not willing to move forward without a response from counsel. I requested a review on October 16th, and I have not received anything. So in the explanation that this has just been languishing and that I have taken several steps, and they have been good faith and appropriate and working on behalf of the entity. And I'm waiting on legal opinion. But my recommendation to cure all of this past behavior is to allow me to move forward without undue influence from the board.
Okay, yeah, I don't think anyone was saying don't pursue other options. And in fact, I think that was mentioned several times.
If I pursue Redmond Insurance, that puts us in some ethical issues.
I don't understand why you already have part of the process done, you can pursue that option and other options. And I think the reason why Redmond Insurance specifically was mentioned is because several of us had heard that they are competitive with iCrimp. That makes them very attractive because we want to be financially and fiscally responsible. And we had a consensus at one time for you to pursue that, and I thought you said, okay, that you understood that, and then it hasn't been.
So the consensus was on 9/21/23, and it was, quote, PLAS moves to direct the library director to process the applications and paperwork for iCrimp and Great American Insurance Group. She was asked to complete at the September 28th meeting and engage those 2 policies. The board authorizes the director contracting authority over $50,000. And then on 9/21, a consensus was reached to have Redmond provide full insurance quote Plasmid to add any additional insurance quotes from Redmond and March McLennan, formerly Payne West, be provided for review at the special meeting held on September 27th at 12:30. So my review was that there was no consensus directing. I have reviewed footage as well. I have not seen anything specific. Like I said, I don't have an issue with moving forward, but I will say this board has not budgeted any additional insurance forms. So I think that is critical. I also believe that we have insurance. It may not be what we want, but we are not being negligent or not following. We have ICRIP, we have employment liability, so to say or characterize that we don't have insurance is inaccurate.
Trustee Blas.
So we have minimal insurance. We don't have full coverage. That's all I've said. I am fully open to the idea of going and getting quotes from 3 companies. And I thought that's what you were doing. But the only one I know of is Redmond has come up with a company that's willing to do it and will give a competitive bid, it sounds like, and it keeps getting ignored. If there's other companies, please get to it and get to it quickly. We need to get full coverage, and we'll figure out the budget part later. Don't hang up because of having $500 versus $750 or $1,000.
Okay, so there were 2 times that we tried to get consensus. The first time it did just, we kind of got lost and meandered. But there was a second time that we said, okay, you'll be next. The second time I made sure we got consensus and it was absolutely clear. And I even indicated that, okay, so we're absolutely clear that we have consensus, and there was. All right, Katie, Trustee Blank.
I am very concerned about how the director is being treated. It doesn't seem like anyone heard that she was also waiting on legal counsel for some information, and that has been a little slower than she would like. The second thing is there are real ethical concerns with this board. I have received from the community several people who have pointed out that there may be definite political contribution conflicts with companies that we're looking at. So the director's alluding to some of that. I think if we move forward with asking her to right now move forward without, get rid of the blame, move forward, ask her to look for check with brokers, we can step forward. But otherwise, we are going to stay in this mess that we're in right this minute.
Okay, well, it didn't sound like it was a good idea to proceed with this at this time until we get more information from legal counsel. So if there's no further discussion, we will vote on. It has been moved that the CLN board direct the board treasurer to work with insurance brokers to obtain full coverage midterm quotes and CLN staff to support the treasurer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
I'm going to have to say no, I don't think it's a good idea at this time. So the motion is
fails.
It fails. All right.
Can we?
Okay, we are out of time and they need to use the room for something else.
Okay, I move we adjourn.
Has been moved to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, and we are now adjourned.